Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the pre-draft special. It is Saturday, March 18th, which means it's almost draft time. I'm your host, Kyle Carbone. I am joined by my co-commish, co-host,
Mhm.
Eric Follman. Eric, how are you doing today?
Oh man, I'm ready to talk some baseball. I'm excited. With the people have been clamoring. The few people have been clamoring for a podcast for a while now. So, the last one we just found out was New Year's Eve. So almost 3 months, 2.5 months since then. So, a lot has gone on. I think there's been a lot more trades this offseason than there was last offseason, if I had to take a guess. But
An incredible amount of trades. 19 trades have happened, I think you counted, since our last podcast. In 3 months, when there hasn't even been a pitch thrown, a statistic tallied, anything like that, there have been 19 trades since then. We are a bunch of psychos. I mean, psychos that record on New Year's Eve. We put in holiday hours that day the last time we recorded.
heck yeah.
Now we're on weekend hours. We're getting that time and a half, putting our work into here. But I'm going to jump in right with a question for you, Eric. And that question for you is, what does the landscape of the Boys of Summer look like right now? And who
Ooh.
has the power, the kashish, to change it in the draft this year?
I think it's really interesting because each year so far, I mean, obviously this is only for a lot of us only our third year doing a keeper league. We're starting to kind of get used to it a little bit more here and there, but every year has felt so different from each other because that first year everyone goes in, there's no money spent, right? You have $260, go free, go do your thing. The second year, okay, now we have A and B contract. Now this year, this is when it's like full on fledged out we're gonna have A, B, C contracts. C contracts are gonna be superstar players. When do they start losing their value midway through? There's just a lot going on in a year three of a league like this, and obviously everyone knows what's coming next year. That I'm really excited to see the strategies that people have. To answer your second question about who do I think's got the power to change the landscape of the league, the easy answer for me would obviously be the guy with the most money. Jordan can do a lot of different things with it, but I think in terms of competing this year, but also able to do really interesting things, I think Chad is in a really, really interesting spot where he's got couple B contracts that can really help him move forward, but he's also got some money where I think he can jump up the power rankings quite a bit.
Yeah, we'll obviously dive pretty deep into each team here in a little bit, but Chad's team has so much upside that it's kind of why. I mean, whenever you have a guy like DeGrom and kind of the young guns that he has, and Wander Franco and some of those guys, like, yeah, I mean, the upside is there, but I don't know if Chad has the money or the availability or whatever it is to actually make a leap into the money, I guess you could say, into the top three in Roto, or I guess anybody can kind of win head to head. We saw that with Justin a few 2 years ago, who had no business being in the championship.
Ugh.
Came within a half point of taking me down, but he failed because goat over here. The start of a dynasty that was the current dynasty that is ongoing. From your boy. But anyway, yeah, I mean, so Chad has that kind of upside with his team. I don't know if he'll actually get there because there's just so much that has to go right for him. And I wish it he made a few more moves. I know he was trying to do the 2-for-1s this offseason, but couldn't really get a whole lot out of them. And he ended up dropping an interesting piece. Maybe we'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, I mean, Chad, he could maybe make some moves, but we'll kind of see how the draft kind of pans out for him. But I still feel like we're not that far removed. A lot of guys made a lot of moves this offseason, but we're still kind of looking at a pretty good top three that is just about separate themselves from just about everybody. I mean, we have the top three from Roto last year: myself, Phil, and Peter. And in our power rankings, they're going to find themselves near the top. And I think that there is a drop off after those top three. And you'd think that over year, those kind of contracts, some guys would be thrown back, some guys would, some C contracts will be released, and the teams kind of change all the transactions. But I think we're going to find that those teams are going to find themselves near the top of Roto. And is there anybody that you would expect, or anybody out of those three that you expect to drop off, or anybody that you expect to kind of
Ooh.
join them this year?
You said drop off. You said Peter, Kyle, and you. Or sorry,
No,
Peter.
Phil, myself, and Peter.
I obviously without giving away the power rankings, I'm not going to say too much, but I do agree that I mean this is the same conversation we really had last year where we felt like there was 4 or 5 teams that are good, then kind of and then it gets really bad. And I think that's kind of going to be the same this year, but I think it's also going to be interesting to see where teams kind of set themselves up because there is movement in that middle ground where teams can compete. I mean, there's what do we have in the head-to-head? 5, 6 playoff teams? Is that about? We have 6. So I mean, there's it gets muddied there in the middle this year.
Yeah, and kind of overall kind of landscape of it. When we talk about, the types of things that can happen. Oh man, I had a train of thought and I just lost it. Holy shit.
Way to go. Come on, dude.
Oh, I was gonna lead us into what was it gonna be? So let me ask you this. Were there any transactions, any guys that were dropped that surprised you this year?
Yeah, I actually was a little surprised at a couple of them. One of them was, well, I know your dad was trying to trade Garcia all off season, so I'm not saying I was shocked that he didn't keep him with how much he was trying to trade him, but I don't think his price was awful, especially with the pitchers that are in this draft coming up, because I don't think that price is going to change a lot. I will also say I thought Luis Robert was a surprise drop. I think, given where Dexter's team was at that point, how much money he had.
Had he had just reached out to Peter.
I know, and it's one of those things too where we're going to look at it from we're going to talk about this I'm sure a couple times, but from different teams' perspectives can afford different contracts, and I felt like with how much money Dexter had at that point, I felt like keeping Robert over even like a Manea, a $20 difference just was just worth it in itself.
Yeah, probably, especially in a draft like this. And that was actually, I remembered my next point, which was that this draft this year is so talent deprived. And I thought that there would kind of be more, even in last year and this year, I thought there would be more talent available. But of those top, Eric, you have the ADP data,
Yeah.
of the top 50, there's only what, one or two top 50 players available this year. I mean, it's Michael Harris is the only one in the top 30 that's available, right?
Yeah, I mean it's pretty bare in terms of what's going to be there if when you sort it by hitters and pitchers. I think yeah, Harris is 40, no one else inside the top 50. Mullins and Bregman are peaking right around there with Robert, Carroll, Henderson there. But and I'm sure we're going to hit on this too. Yes, Carroll and Henderson and a lot of these guys are the next hot shot things, but there, you kind of mentioned it the other day. There's nothing that's really necessarily been proven yet over a long term. So I mean, yes, you might spend 25, 30 on them and feel good getting them, and there's nothing wrong with that, but they still got to prove it at the biggest level, and they haven't fully done that yet. So it is very talent deprived at the top, and people are going to be paying up.
Yeah. So with Luis Roberts looks like ADP is the 45th guy off the board. We got Cedric Mullins at 47, and then we had Michael Harris. We said what's his ADP?
On Fantrax, I got 40.
Okay, he's 31 on Fantasy Pro. So there's three top 50 guys, nobody in the top 30. After that, the next guy that's available, keep going, keep going. Devin
Devin
Williams,
Williams,
59.
Bregman,
Yeah, oh yeah, Bregman, 63. Sterling Marte,
Marte,
70. Uh,
Carroll.
Carroll at 75. So I mean, we're really stretching for guys, and we're not really seeing those real impact guys that can really turn their teams
Hmm.
around. So with that being said, it's going to be hard for those guys that finished 14th, 15th, or 14th, 13th, 12th, 11th, 10th last year, because those guys need a facelift. They need a roster overall. They can't just add around the edges and expect to vault themselves into that top three when we have that top three that was kind of set from last year that didn't really change a whole lot, that they retained a lot of their stud guys, especially Peter's team who's loaded.
Oh
How are
man.
teams going to go about even competing? Is it even worth it for them to even try?
Well, I think that's what makes this draft so interesting too. Is I know we say it a lot, but that reset next year, there is so much about getting values this year. I think we're going to see a lot of dudes getting thrown back next year. That even if Fangraph says they're worth 30 and we have them for 30, I think people are just going to want to throw guys back in just to have money, just to go into next year with 230, 200. Unless people hit on dynamite picks this year for A contracts, I don't really see many guys being kept, which is why I think it's vital, insanely vital towards the end of the draft to be getting those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, $7 guys that do turn into something. Because I don't do you see much of a world where teams keep more than 6 players heading into next year?
Yeah, definitely.
I
Um,
don't. I don't.
It depends on what well, teams are gonna have so many C contracts, and because not there's so many guys that were kept this year
Right.
on bad contracts that are going to be C's this year that are C's right now. Yeah, I mean, maybe you're right. There might not be teams that keep 12, 11, 10, as there used to be. I think there will be teams that are able to stockpile. I think if teams do it right, and if some of the lower teams kind of show their hand a little bit early and go, this is just not my year, and I want to stock up for next year, like I think that a Jordan probably should. He should go into the draft with 13. He should probably go into free agency or into the
Yeah.
offseason with about 15 or 16 if he does things right. We have fringe teams like Justin, Tyler, and Dex, and kind of those teams that are kind of be towards the bottom, no spoilers, that if they kind of get to month 1 or 2, there might not be a lot of A contracts that aren't going up by $5 the following year that are going to be available that you might want to kind of jump early. So, I mean, it might be beneficial to jump ship early.
Right.
Normally, I usually say wait to the deadline. The same offers you're getting right now, they're still going to be there at the deadline. But this year might be the year that it might pay to kind of jump ship
And
early, picking up the guys you pick up on the waiver wire, trade those C contracts away that you can't keep to next year. And when you realize I can't compete with these guys that are at the top.
Well, and to add on to that point too, I know you always say it's kind of silly to leave the draft with money, but in a weird way, this might be the year to leave the draft with money. Don't overspend just to fill your roster because Jordan's got $212. I'm not saying it would be silly for him to completely use all that money, but if again, if you're looking for guys for next year, don't spend 25, 30 on a guy that you know you're just not going to keep next year. Try to get, I don't know, take a shot on a guy for $4 or $5, and try to build towards next year because like you said, some of these teams just aren't going to compete. And one more thing that I've thought about too is the second the draft is over, obviously your lineup cap is $320, right? The second the draft is over, there's a lot of C contracts like a Trout, a Mookie, or some on some other teams that the salary almost like doesn't matter anymore once the second the draft is over. So it's not like, oh, Trout's $50, I don't want him. No, that's Mike Trout now. I can go and get him and not really worry much about salary anymore. And I think it's going to be interesting to see when people sell off on some of these C guys and what type of value they do get if they wait too long.
Yeah, and going back to like the Jordan thing, Jordan's got $200. He's got 8 guys to get. So if we take that 200 out of that 8, that's $25 a piece.
It's too
How many
much.
how many $25 guys?
Right.
If he goes 8 $25 guys, how many of those guys are going to be worth 25 next year? How many are you going to want to keep for 25? So, I mean, yeah, maybe he could go out and he could spend 60 on Michael Harris if he wanted to, if he's the best guy available. But that doesn't
It make no sense.
having a $60 Michael Harris isn't going to help you next year. Hey,
No.
Michael Harris could have the win MVP. He's not going to be worth $60 next year. So, like, how much does that really do you? Like, and I'm kind of curious what a guy like Bryce Harper is going to go for because
Yeah.
you're not getting Bryce Harper to really help you a ton this year if he's not going to be back till the All-Star break. And if you have to spend 40 to 45 on him, are you going to keep Bryce Harper at 45 coming off an injury-riddled season? I guess it all depends on how he performs, but that's not really much of a bargain. And kind of the whole reason why I traded Juan Soto in the offseason, because I didn't view him as a $54 player. Now, Bryce Harper for 45 might be more likely to be kept than a $54 Juan Soto, but I also think that Juan Soto is a better player than Bryce Harper. So, I mean, there's kind of obviously some big strategy that needs to happen here with a lot of guys. A lot of different ways to go about it. I know your strategy, which is I'm just going to fill my roster with talent and then get my $1 guys at the
Heck
end.
yeah.
And because the $1 guys are the guys you're most likely to keep next year.
Yeah, especially next year.
$1
Yeah.
contracts are the guys that you are most likely to keep, and you hope that they break out. But those are also the guys that are most likely to bust and the most likely guys to bring you down and the guys that do not help you. And you know what, Eric? Guess who else wants $1 guys at the end of the auction? Everybody else. So when you think, oh yeah, I'm just going to get a Rowdy Tellez for $1 at the end, and then you have 8 other teams that all have $30 and all want their $1 guys, it's going to be a bidding war. And the way I kind of like to do it is if we kind of take a look at this average draft position here. If we look at ADP, there's 14 teams in our league, and we all draft 18 players. So that's 252 guys that are drafted. So if we go down to 252, this Adam Wainwright would technically be like the 252, Mr. Irrelevant of our auction. So if we look at the guys here that are slightly above, these are your kind of $1 guys towards the end. And maybe some of these guys go up, maybe not. So you have your Brian De La Cruz's, CJ Abrams, Miguel Vargas, Ian Segura, like Jorge Lopez, like Kendall Graveman, Conforto, a lot of the closers, Gurriel. And I think the closers will probably get pushed up. But John Birdie, Ramon Laureano, these are kind of the guys that you're getting for $1 at the end, where you might think like, oh yeah, I'm going to just get like a Benintendi type or a Patrick Sandoval type or Tristan Casas. But if Tristan Casas is there at the end and there's 7 guys that have $20, $30, he might go for $20. We saw that with the Justin Turner last year and the Cabrian Hayes that Bryce just had the money to spend, like a lot
Yeah.
of teams do, and didn't have the roster spot to spend it. So
That's why when I said just a few, I think I messaged you just about a month ago. I said, dude, Corbin Carroll's going to go for $25 easy. And I think at that time, I don't know if we were a little too far away from the draft, but you kind of were like, I don't think so. I'm like, dude, I don't think you realize how many teams have like a decent amount of money where it's just going to be silly, I think, at the top. And I think people were almost too hesitant last year. And I think me and you were both surprised Mullins only went for the 32. I don't think that's going to happen this year. I really don't think that's going to, I think those top 4 or 5 guys, you got to pay $30 for them.
yeah, easily, and they probably won't be worth it. But
Probably not.
if you want to make a run this year, and you want to, it's almost like you have to choose: are you going to be a this year team, or are you going to be a
Yeah.
next year team? Because if you want to spend the $30-40 it's going to take you to get Corbin Carroll, to get Cedric Mullins, to get some of these pitchers. I mean, where's the pitching in this year's?
Oh man, we thought last year was bad, right? I mean, it's.
Oh man, and last year yielded Shane McClanahan and Justin Verlander. Who's the McClanahan and Verlander going to be this year?
And I genuinely considered, and we'll talk about that when we get to my team, not keeping. I really toyed with keeping Bieber or not. But again, if I throw Bieber in, I think again it's a very similar situation where if a team needs pitching, who isn't going to spend a 35 or 40 on Bieber with what's available? I mean, Logan Webb, Kyle Wright was a guy that was picked up after the draft last year. Blake Snell can't get through 4 innings. I mean, like it's just there's not much. I think there's value, and I think me and you agree on this. I do think there's value late in the draft, pitching and
There
hitting.
will be
But
guys that make impacts, but
yes,
it's going to be a lot harder to find than it's ever been.
right, 100%, no doubt.
Logan Webb will be helpful, but like if you have to spend $40 for Logan Webb, like Logan Webb will never be a $40 player. Like I'm sorry, like I don't see the path for Logan Webb being like a top 10 pitcher to be worth $40. So you're gonna have to decide: do I want to try and push the chips in, spend my money now, like a guy like Chad? Chad's been building this with all these prospects for all this time, and now all of his prospects and all of his young guys are all C contracts. Is this the year where he's gonna try and get out of 8th, as he says, and be above 8th?
If he does it right, it can be.
He's just going to spend $40 on Logan Webb, and then he's just going to be back to square one next year because he's not going to have any keepers left? Or is he going to be like, well, I'm just going to try and keep building with what I have. Maybe if I make a run, and maybe instead I'm just going to go for Hunter Brown for $5 instead and try and build something Edward Cabrera out of some of these guys, these values. It's tough decisions that have to be made, but I can tell you one thing: I don't want to be going into this draft needing pitching, and I am so thankful that I don't. That I have my full 7-man rotation going into draft night.
I was close there with you. Mine's not as talented, but I almost had it filled out, and then someone had to celebrate too hard. But
yeah. Fuck the World Baseball Classic. I'll be in their homes, wrapped in bubble wrap.
God damn it.
Fuck baseball. Fuck competitive baseball, right?
Fuck that shit.
So looking at this free agency landscape, is there anything that kind of stands out to you positional wise or depth wise or whatever it may have you?
I think I think there's some premium positions that are tough. I know we kind of talked about this in the chat the other day when we were saving it for the pod, but I think shortstop is pretty thin. I mean, I think if you're going in there looking for a shortstop, which is a usually pretty loaded position, I think it's very thin, especially fantasy wise. I'm not even I like Nico Horner as an everyday baseball player, but in terms of like a fantasy player, he's just not really there right now. I think first base has some deepness there to it, which is why I kind of pulled off Vlad when I did, because I did feel like that there was a little bit of first base depth there where you could get some guys, and I don't think there's like a ton of teams that need first baseman. But obviously also I think outfield. I mean, you can always find some value in the outfield, and I think that's why I kind of did it last year too, where I tried my best to keep positional players because I do feel like you can find those 20 home run, 65 RBI bats in the outfield late in the draft.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. And as I've kind of said in the chat, like there is a strategy to knowing what's available and factoring that into not only who you keep, but the transactions that you make this offseason. I look at second base and I'm like, oh, these second basemen are pretty atrocious. Like there's not many start-worthy second basemen
No, there's not.
that are left out there. When we go to third base, if you don't get Bregman or Henderson, then who's your third baseman? Are you going to let Brandon Drury or Rendon be your starting third baseman? And there's really only like 7 or 8 actually start-worthy third basemen this year. So if you don't get one of them, you're kind of SOL there. Catcher's catcher. I mean, it's probably deeper than it normally is. There is some depth at first base. There's a lot of guys I like. There's kind of clump of this top five here of Vinny Pasquantino, Abreu, Walker, Tellez, and even Bell and
There's some
France.
young guys in there too that should get some playing time too.
Got to pencil those guys in for 25 homers and 90 RBIs, I would think, for a lot of them. Maybe something close to 30, maybe more like 80 RBIs, but I think a lot of them are going to put up decent numbers and on base percentages that won't kill you for many of them. If you want on base percentage, you go Ty France. If you want a little more upside and good on base percentage, you go Miranda. Or if you want to go take a flyer on these young guys like Quesas Meneses, then you can kind of take some flyers. So first base is a position that I'm glad that I can fill in the draft, and I'm pretty confident about that. Shortstop, there's some names I like, but so many just unproven. I mean, you have the Yankees guys and Peraza and Volpe. Who knows who's going to make the team there? Tim Anderson, Nico Horner. I mean, there's guys that are start worthy, and guys like Abrams and Ezekiel Tovar, who are rookies, or
But when you go back to your point too on the average draft position, it shows right there on Fantrax. Would you say the magic number was 270?
251.
251. So you have, according to Fantrax, you have 6 guys that are worthy of taking. And by the time you get to 6, those are you said $1 players.
Yeah.
So what is there, 4 shortstops that are worth more than spending $1 on?
Yeah, essentially. Yeah.
I mean, that's thin, right? That's thin.
Yeah, outfield is kind of loaded at the top if you need an outfielder, which is good, but it thins out after that. I mean, once you kind of get past Hunter Renfroe here, and now you're like after ADP 175, now you're looking at Bellinger, Newt Bar, which is I think a candy bar.
And you're talking $20 players from last year, Renfroe,
Verdugo, but these
Castellanos.
are guys that had bad years last year or are
Yeah.
currently injured, and Harper and Suzuki and Verdugo, who is like a 2-category producer. Yeah, Oscar Gonzalez. So like, yeah, like it does have the Michael Harris's, the Cedric Mullins, Luis Roberts of the world, but it falls off a cliff fast. And I don't know if you guys have paid attention to kind of the depth at certain positions, but outfield is a position this year that it's just like it has some good players. A lot of our good players, like Acuna and Betts and Soto are outfielders, but it thins out. It kind of.
So when you have to fill out 4 outfielders, like a team like Dave, where you have none, that makes it very, very tough.
Yeah, it certainly does. All right. Is there any other league-wide kind of themes or anything you want to talk about before we get into our kind of team by team power rankings?
No, man, I'm excited to get into it. Let's get going.
All right. So here's how it's going to go. We're going to go team by team. We're going to go 14-1 with our power rankings. There's actually going to be a few ties. We're going to talk about those when we kind of get to them. There's 3 ties, including a 3-team tie in our power rankings. So you guys probably aren't going to be too happy about that because, you want to be above or below the guys that are around you, not tied with them. Ties like kissing your sister. But
and I can't wait to start this off, Kyle, because I got to say our takes get recorded, they get written down, they are used for revenge. So I'm sure whatever we say here, we could be right on 80% of things. Well, I'll probably be more like 50-40%, but I'm sure whatever we're wrong on, we will hear it. So be ready for it.
All right. And then as we go team by team, we'll list we'll give you some transaction grades, some trade grades that we got for each team. Oh, I forgot to mention, my biggest surprise that got thrown back, David Bednar for 5. That's a pretty cruiser for the Pirates. Yeah, it's for the Pirates, but
would you believe too, when I tried shedding salary, I offered Trout for him straight up. And I know you wouldn't take it. I know with your salary, you wouldn't take, but I'm just saying in terms of how much money Chad has. Interesting.
So Chad could go from being the 9th place team to the 8th place team and then have no money to spend for.
I think he's got a shot to be in the top 6 or 7 if he does it right. But let's get rolling. Let's talk about it.
All right. So coming in at number 14 might surprise some folks because it's not a certain somebody that's come up a lot in the chats at having the worst team, but it's newbie. It is our newbie Jordan Lincecum prematurely. And I'm going to take the lead on this one because I've kind of looked at this roster quite a bit. This is a roster that it's not that it has bad pieces, but this is a team that is just not built to win this year. And I think that Jordan has done a great job kind of coming in, realizing where he stands, going, I inherited a train wreck into a dumpster fire, and I have need some path to kind of turn this around. And he got rid of all of his C contracts, would have been C's this year, all for B contracts, take some flyers on some guys. But with that being said, there is realistically no path for Jordan to be relevant in fantasy this year. I mean, we're talking the 0.00001 percentile of him actually being relevant. Yeah, maybe he can sneak into being a 6 seed and head to head and
Mm.
surprise some folks in that, but it is so unlikely because he's just so deprived of talent. And as we just got done talking about, there is no talent. Jordan could spend his $200 and get the top 5 guys that are available, and it won't matter for this team, unfortunately. So that's why we have you at 14. Eric, what would you like to add to that?
Not a whole lot more. I mean, he, like you said, he made a mission to get B contracts. And if you look at this team, you are hoping that he's got does he have the full 12 keepers? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, about 10 keepers. You got to hope that at least 5 or 6 of these guys are keepable again next year. I mean, that's really what an objective here is for him, I think, because if you can turn around half these guys and say they are worth it again to keep heading into next year with a lot of money and kind of a reset, I think guys like Jimenez, Pena are interesting. Ruiz is still a young catcher. He might be able to turn on an offensive season. Who knows? And obviously, you got to hope Cortez doesn't fall off because he could be a huge keeper heading into next year at that price. But I think you hit it on the head here. This team's 14. It's no shock it's 14. It's meant to be 14. And yeah.
I totally forgot I didn't do exactly what I said I was about to do, which is talk about his transactions first. So let's take a look at some of the trades that he has made since the last time we recorded. So last time we recorded was, again, New Year's Eve. So anything from January and on, we will give you your grade for. So the first trade he made, he was in the league not very long, and Justin hit him up and said, I'll give you Steven Kwan, Drew Rasmussen, and Jeremy Pena for Arozarena, Castillo, Hader, and Bregman. So we got rid of all his massive C contracts and got back some cheap B contracts in Rasmussen, Kwan, and Pena. How do you think he did in this one?
This is kind of where he, took the team over and started kind of slicing it up a little bit. I mean, again, I think it was interesting. I think there was a point where he could have maybe said, you know what, with the pieces I have, I could maybe try and compete. But I think he just took it over and said, I'm just going to completely change it up, which is what he did there. A lot of moving parts there. Obviously, Bregman and Hader, or Bregman's not kept. Hader was for another team. We're going to obviously get into all that, but I think it wasn't a bad move. I think it makes sense again for what he's trying to do. But I think Rasmussen could have been a keeper too.
He thrown back?
So what's that?
Was he thrown back, Rasmussen?
No, I got him. I have him
Oh,
though.
you got him.
Yeah, yeah. That's why this is crazy because there's a lot of stuff that's happened. But it was fine. Again, I wasn't thrilled with it because of who he didn't keep, but he got Pena out of it. So
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, if you look at it in kind of big picture, so really he's got Kwan and Pena out of this, and he gave up Castillo, Arozarena, Hader, and Bregman.
I mean, think if he keeps those 4 guys, that's what I'm saying. I think there was an
It's a lot
avenue to
better.
compete.
But I think he also underestimated how much value those guys actually had. And I made the same mistake earlier in the offseason where I traded away Nolan Arenado and Clayton Kershaw and some other guys. I really underestimated the value that those guys actually had because a lot of owners looked at the free agents and were like, we don't have guys available. So I'm just going to lock myself into having some better players. And
Who
even
said that 3 months ago? Who said that?
even if I have to overpay for them, yes, you did. And so, not that I think it's the right thing to do. I'm still not really with you on that, but it's the way that a lot of people are thinking. And so, people are valuing a $27 closer in Josh Hader for whatever
Yeah.
reason. And valuing a $34 Bregman. I know that Justin got some calls on Bregman. Luis Castillo was very pivotal. A lot of people wanted Luis Castillo. And Arozarena, he's having a really good World Baseball Classic, but
Yeah,
people actually wanted these guys. And I didn't think that any of these guys were, I mean, Castillo was going to be kept, but I thought none of those guys were keeper worthy, but they ended up being trade assets that he kind of gave away them all when he probably could have gotten some better deals, kind of shopping them around. So I'm going to give him a D for this one, maybe a D plus, just because he didn't get the maximum value, I thought. And I'm not very high on Jeremy Pena. I just don't think the upside as a player is very high. And Steven Kwan, his upside too, it's very low ceiling for Steven Kwan. And what did he turn Rasmussen into?
He turned it into DJ LeMahieu.
DJ LeMahieu. Okay, so DJ
Yeah.
LeMahieu. So which is garbage. So yeah, I'm gonna give him a D plus. I did not like this trade at all. What was your grade for him?
I would say a D. Yeah, because again, I know it's a crazy world, and you know how my opinion is on closers, but in this weird fantasy realm we're in, Hader does have keeper value. Bregman, I think on the right team, like you said, had keeper value. Rosarena, obviously. So yes, he got B contracts that maybe could be keepers next year, but I think, like you said, I think he just gave too much value away.
Yeah. Next one, Cole Carrasco for Brandon Nimmo. I'm gonna give him a D for this one as well. Because Cole Carrasco is way too expensive to be even keeper worthy for as little as he's proven. I mean, for $11, for what did he have? What was his ERA last year? Last year he had a 3.97 ERA, 1.33 whip gross, and over 152 innings. He's not the pitcher that he used to be. He's 35 years old now. He's pretty old. I don't think he's an asset. I would not keep him for 11. And to trade away a guy that
He's
I do
F.
in Rasmussen was pretty surprising to me.
Yeah, Carrasco for Nimmo is just a bad one. I mean, if you really look at Nimmo's numbers when he's healthy, I think he's very much overpaid in real life, but I think he's undervalued in fantasy. Dude had 100
In
runs
base
last
percentage,
year.
he's more valuable than in an average league.
Yes. But I mean, even in OBP, I mean, look at the last couple of years. OBP 401, 404, 367, and he had 100 runs scored last year, hitting in that lineup. I don't see a reason why he wouldn't do it again. Nimmo is the player there.
I thought Nimmo would have more speed, though. I thought he was projected to be like a sneaky 15, 20 stolen base guy last year. But when you look at it, I mean, he's not one of my favorites because, yeah, he's got a decent on base percentage. But if his on base percentage is 367, you can find a 367 on base percentage anywhere else. And with a 367 on base percentage, you're getting below average home runs, RBI numbers that hurt you, and no stolen bases. So, like, yeah, he's going to score some runs and he's going to have a decent on base percentage. But do you really want a two category producer on your roster? I mean, I feel like you can pretty much find that anymore. I mean,
I
Nico
think he's elite in those two, though. OBP and runs, that's elite. If you're scoring 100
367
runs,
is not elite.
no,
It's very good. It's above average. But if it gets back to closer to 400, then yes.
I don't know. I think he's worth it.
And I don't know what the power numbers are. He's also always hurt, so maybe that's why the
Yes,
power
yes,
numbers
true.
are low. But that's kind of a tick against him, not tick for him. I mean, it says this isn't Byron Buxton here we're talking about before I get hot and bothered. And then he traded Ahmed Rosario and Jordan Montgomery away for Eugenio Suarez and Miles Mikolas. In this trade, I'm not a huge fan of this one either. I think Rosario and Suarez it's a category swap. They're both $1, both $B players. And Montgomery with Nicholas, I think, is pretty much a wash too, but give the nod. I think Montgomery's the better pitcher. Plus, I also think that Montgomery's younger and has more upside. I'd rather him for the position that Jordan's in.
Same, yeah, exactly. Position Jordan's in. You want the younger guy that can maybe prove himself. By the time you maybe keep Suarez next year, he's another year older. Mikolas isn't really Mikolas isn't very fantasy relevant with his K per nine numbers, but I would also say that not really the greatest move here.
Yeah, so we got about 20 seconds left before we get cut off here. But yeah, I think I'm gonna give him a C minus here. I don't hate it. It's a category swap. If that's the players that you like, then go get the players you like. But I don't think it made his team better. I don't think it made his future better.
Nope.
All right, so we're about to get cut off here. And so we will see you guys on the other side. Now, Jordan, I hope you're listening to this because I do have some good news for you. There is a silver lining. It is just going to be a delayed silver lining. Now, I've kind of mentioned this in the chat. I've alluded to it a few times, but there is a damn good team that can be made this year for 2024. And unfortunately, I don't see the path for you being relevant this year. But if we look at some of the players that are going to be available this year that are not going to go for high price because they're either injured or suspended or whatever it may be. Let's take a look at some of the names, and Eric, you can chime in here with a couple of others. But if you take those 8 spots that he has available and you add Edwin Diaz, Bryce Harper, you can add a guy like Trevor Story. Who got Tommy John recently?
Bueller
is another. Let me look at this. Some other guys over Liam Hendricks. Who are some other guys? I feel like I'm missing some.
Even still, that's a list of names there.
Yeah, and so Frankie Montas is another one. You can get these guys at bargains. Who's going to spend $30 on Trevor Story? But when Trevor Story comes back after the All-Star break, Trevor Story is I expect him to be normal Trevor Story and to be a valuable contributor. If you can go in and get a Bryce Harper for 35, if you can go get a Trevor Story for 10, 15, 20, whatever it is, go get Walker Bueller for a couple bucks, who's not going to pitch this year or not going to pitch for a while. Go get Edwin Diaz. Now, these are teams that you can these are players that you can actually build your team around. These aren't like role players that like a Jeremy Pena or an Andres Jimenez and a Steven Kwan that, yeah, like, okay, those are good guys to have for $1 when you already have a good team. Like, but those guys aren't helping you get from the bottom up to where you are right now. But there are a lot of guys out there that can help you next year that you can get for a bargain now, but you would have to bite the bullet now to get there. If it were me personally, I'd be calling up Bryce to see if you can get Acuna off of him. Maybe call up my buddy Eric and see if he wants to take on Mike Trout. Because the thing about those is that, yeah, well, why would I trade for Mike Trout? Because you have $200 to spend. You shouldn't spend it because you should try to be getting bargains. But if you go into the draft with Mike Trout, then you're not going to spend the money anyway, so spend it on a guy you can do. As soon as the draft is over, trade Mike Trout for whatever the prospects are. And then you could get a haul back for some of these guys. That would have been my path as opposed to going into this draft with all the money. And maybe you can still pull some stuff off before our deadline here, but that would be my path. I mean, if he called you up, Eric, and said, I'll give you Miles Mikolas for Mike Trout, what is the answer?
No.
No? Is there anybody you on here you would trade Mike Trout for?
I would do it for Jimenez.
And so I think that would, and because Jimenez, like, yeah, he's a good player, he's a quality player, but is he a guy you can build your team around? No, and you have Jeremy Pena at shortstop already, and I would go get Trevor Story, who's also a shortstop or third base, wherever he's going to play for the Red Sox whenever he comes back. He's going to be an infielder. So that would be my path. Eric, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I think that's actually rounded up pretty perfectly. It's almost like you don't want to spend all your money because then you're not getting all the values in there. But at the same time, maybe you know it's one of those teams like guys he does draft, he might, like you said, have to trade them early. Like you got to find the right time to do it where you are getting back as much as you possibly can. So hopefully you make some right moves. It'll be interesting.
I don't think that adding a $40 Michael Harris, a $30, $40 Logan Webb, it will do anything for this team, unfortunately.
No, it's got to be complete trade capital, and it's got to be trade capital instantly because now the cap's 320. So maybe he's thinking, okay, I'll get Harris for 40, and now salaries don't matter as much. Almost instantly trade him because you're not going to compete this year. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All right. So enough about Jordan. We have to get to our 13th and 12th place team. We have a tie for second to last between two players that Eric and I are about to disagree on. Eric thinks that it is very clear that this team is in 13th place, and that is just a blah team. Dave's team. You are very adamant that this team is the second to worst team behind Jordan's team. Tell me why you think that way.
Oh man, I mean, we talked about the lack of talent in the draft, and I'm sure we're going to sound like a broken record with that. But O'Neal Cruz, I mean, would I keep him for $8? Sure, because of what he can bring. But I mean, he's damn near unstartable with the OBP he brings. I mean, he's got to bring that up badly. But I mean, if you match his games over 162 game season, they are decent. They are pretty good. So, but Tatis again, he's out for the first month. So you're literally heading into the season with O'Neal Cruz as your only bat, like literally your only bat. And then you have Joe Musgroves, who's already dealing with an injury, Max Scherzer, who's 38 years old, and then it just completely falls off. I know a lot of people are high on Hunter Green this year, kind of taking that next step forward, maybe being a top 30-40 pitcher, but it's Musgrove, Scherzer, and then nothing in terms of, I mean, I'd be fine with Walker. Barlow's going to be on a team that wins 55, 60 games. He's not going to get many saves. You just have literally every single hole to fill. I mean, every single hole to fill. I would say his rotation, I know you have Scherzer and Musgrove. I would still say that is maybe an above average rotation with Green. I would say above average, but it's just not enough to make up for everything else.
How about O'Neal Cruz's 325 on base percentage for the final 2 months last year? So Mr. Detrimental O'Neal Cruz.
He was
so bad on base percentage. For the last 2 months of the year, once he got his footing, he had a 325 on base percentage. That's not detrimental. That's league average.
Again, but he didn't just play 2 months, Kyle. That's what you got to understand.
Yes,
he didn't just play 2 months. Well, I get that, but you can look at
better every year.
The thing is, you can look at like 40 game stretches here, 40 game stretches here. The whole point of a baseball.
This is who he is now. This is
the whole point of a baseball season is you play 150 games.
This is not me saying, from May 28th to June 31st, well, he had this. This is who he is. No, that's all I'm saying. I'm saying this. He started out really slow. He got his footing and hit the rookie wall, but then after that, He was fine. And over the last 2 months, over his last 200 at bats, that is 11 homers, 6 steals. If you take that over 600 at bats, that is 30 homers, 15 steals, and a 325 on
And
base.
I said he was a keeper. I said I would keep him.
Stop hating, stop throwing shade. He's a StatCast darling. He, over the last 5 years, the guy who has hit the hardest hit ball was Giancarlo Mike Stanton in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. And in 2022, that streak stopped because O'Neal Cruz is now the king of hitting balls hard as fuck because he can mash. He
is that a category?
He is has a top sprint speed. He's a power speed guy. He's getting his footing. The Pirates are going to win the NL Central this year.
What? Oh my God, we're getting crazy. We're getting too crazy now, Kyle.
No, but O'Neal Cruz is fine. Tatis is great. We know what Tatis can do. Tatis can put up numbers comparable to anybody in the league, even after his suspension. When we look at the total throughout the year, Tatis could still be a 30-30 guy, even taking.
Do you think they let him? Do you think they let him do that given all these injuries, suspensions? Do you think they let him go and steal 30, 40 bags?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I don't think with El Mago, it's kind of the Javier Baez thing. It's just like you can't just contain him. You just gotta let him do his thing.
Yeah.
I'm higher on Dave's team. He is 12th for me. He may even be higher. He might even be 11th or 10th when this is all said and done.
Don't get too worked up over it.
Dave's team has a lot more upside than he's getting credit for. He has to fill out almost his entire offense, but these are two guys that have more upside in the league than basically anybody in the league. I mean, O'Neal Cruz, when it comes to his sprint speed, his power, I just went over all that. Tatis, we know what Tatis can do. Those two guys, like, there is an outcome where either one of those guys is the best player in fantasy this year. And I'm not even bullshitting you. There is an outcome. They have the talent to do that, to get to that point. Then you look at his rotation, and he has Musgrove, Scherzer, and Hunter Green. Now, you may not love Hunter Green, but I still expect Hunter Green to get about 200 strikeouts if he pitches 150 innings this year.
Oh, so he will.
I kind of like Hunter Green when it comes to that. I don't know what his ERA is going to look like pitching in Cincinnati. I don't know how many pitches they're actually going to let him throw, how many innings they're going to let him throw this year. But last year he had 164 strikeouts in 125 innings. That's well over 200 strikeouts if he goes 150 innings, if he can ramp that up. So he's not going to be bad in strikeouts. He should be decent ERA with those three. T1 Walker, he had a 3.49 ERA last year, so not too bad. Solid whips from those guys. He's got his closer, so he doesn't have to overpay for one of the big name closers because Scott Barlow's his closer. He has positions, and he can address first base, second base, shortstop in the draft where he has, wait for it, $135 to spend in the offseason.
He needs more
to address some of these needs. But he has the actual baseline talent that the guy we're about to talk about next does not have. Dave's team actually has a ceiling. I can see Hunter Green being a top 20 pitcher this year, even if it's only in 150 innings. He can be Shane McClanahan. Joe Musgrove, we know what he can do. He's damn near been a top 10 pitcher. We know that Max Scherzer can pitch to a Cy Young level. He did so last year. So, like, there are guys here, and there's so much talent with Tatis and O'Neal Cruz that there's actually stuff here that I like. Is there any transactions from Dave that we actually need to talk about? He hasn't made any, has he?
I don't think so this offseason. As far as I know, unless it was something small.
Oh, the Hunter Green Suarez swap.
Oh, that was awful, though.
No, awful for who?
I would say for Phil.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, I mean, I for Phil, we'll get into it in a sec, but that was kind of a head scratcher for him. Yeah, I mean, it was a good move. I'd rather have Hunter Green for 6 or whatever he is.
Definitely, 100%. I mean, like you said, who knows what Hunter Green's ERA and WHIP's going to be, but he's came in as a top prospect. Obviously, I'm a prospect guy. You are 100% right.
Yes.
Yeah, if he pitches 150 innings, he will get 200 strikeouts this year. There is no question on that.
Yeah, and Suarez, I mean, he's like a what, 1 category producer?
Yeah, and at this point, with his age, I mean, why don't you just take the shot on Green at that point? But that's just my opinion.
And I would expect his on-base percentage to be a little bit lower than 332.
Yes, I think that's higher than usual. I think you could see a world where he has 280 on base this year.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so that brings me to my team, who I think is worse than Dave's team, which is a team that is also notorious for making a lot of moves. That is the Beantown Boys. Now, with the Beantown boys, he has the unique luxury of trading for guys to eat up his salary while also not being very talented. Sure, he's got Ronald Acuna, but he's overpaying for him at 54. And this is a team that, like, I don't see the path to relevancy. How do you take this rotation and turn this into even top half rotation with the, wait for it, $77 he has to spend? And even his lineup with Salvador Perez, Mountcastle, Albies, McMahon, Bogarts, Acuna, Rosario, I think it's fine. It's an
Pretty
average.
solid, actually.
It's average. Maybe it's like the seventh or eighth best lineup, but like with this pitching staff and with not having money to fill any of these holes, how do you? I mean, he's got some, but I mean, how do you even go about fixing the problems that he has here? So I just don't really see the silver lining in what this team can actually do to get into the roto relevancy or head to head relevancy. Yeah, maybe can see can be a 7, 6 or 7. Well, even 7's not good, but be like that 6 seed, like we said. But I'm not really seeing the path. So enlighten me.
I actually like the offense. I personally, and I'm all about, as you know, keeping players that I think are worth it. I don't think I would have kept Ozzy at 32. I think with the year he had last year, I think he could even go back in the draft, and I think he could even go for 2025 this year. Like I wouldn't have kept him. And I also think the Xander Bogaerts thing, I do think his numbers actually probably do go up in San Diego a little bit, hitting in that lineup. But again, I still don't think I'd pay 30 for him. I just don't think he's that fantasy player that you can really like count on as being like that star stud in the lineup. But overall, it's not like I like this team. It is 12th in my rankings, Kyle. I don't love it, but it's just I think there's more on offense there. I think he's got one of the better hitting catchers, even though I'm not a huge Perez fan. And I think the rotation is very iffy. I think Montgomery's solid. I think Kershaw, with Kershaw's on the mound, he's just as good as Musgrove. He's just as good, close to as Scherzer. It's just he's got to be on the mound. But
And I
other
don't
than
think
that,
they have plans to throw him for more than like 140 innings. Like, I think it's not one of those things where it's like, oh, well, maybe he'll go through and maybe he'll get hurt or maybe he'll be healthy.
right?
Like, I think they already started last year. They're putting things in place for him. Like, you're just not going to pitch.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to skip this turn in the rotation. You're going to throw 5
He's not
innings.
going to hit 180 innings.
Like,
He might not
no.
even hit 160 innings. Yeah, it might be like a 140, 145 type
And that's
cap,
going to be
if
by
anything.
design, not by injury, which he's also susceptible to injury. So, I mean,
Right.
that doesn't take out the injury risk,
But
limiting him.
if you look at kind of like the projections or what they have there, I don't hate the rotation. I do think it's just a very just like those are guys that are going to eat innings. They're going to kind of do their thing and it's there. But I do like the offense more. But I know you like the upside of Dave's. But it's picking apples and oranges. I could have had him 13. I could see that where you see that. It's just both teams are bad.
Yeah, and I mean, these names actually aren't bad. I like Eovaldi. When he's been on the mound, he's been pretty solid. Eflin, a lot of people are saying a lot of good things about him being in Tampa Bay because they invested. He's the largest free agent signing in the history of the franchise, Zach Eflin, if that's a little fun fact there. So in order for them to like go out and sign a guy like that, they have to have seen something. That's a very smart organization.
It
So they
is.
have some big plans to them. If he gets 150 innings out of Kershaw, like then, maybe he's got a little bit something cooking. But like I said, it's all those things have to go right, and the ceiling just still isn't there. Like, I don't think Eovaldi, even on his best year, is going to be a top 25 pitcher. Same thing for Eflin. I mean, the strikeouts there, only 65 strikeouts in 75 innings last year. So like, he's going to, not be very good. And Montgomery's not a huge strikeout guy either. He had 158 strikeouts and 178 innings. So this is already shaping up to be a very below average strikeout team. Who knows what his ERA and WHIP is going to be like? The upside is not there, and the floor is there. And Garrett Whitlock's already hurt, so I don't even know if he'll be ready for opening day. So
Kind of like his Boston guys.
yeah, I wouldn't have kept Bogarts. I think moving from Boston to San Diego is a very vast ballpark shift, and he was in a good lineup in Boston for all those years. And yeah, sure, the lineup is is pretty good for San Diego, but I don't even know where he's going to hit in that lineup, and I don't know how many RBI opportunities he's going to have. And I wouldn't have kept Salvador Perez for 12 either. Let's take a look at his transactions. I gotta get better at doing those first.
Well, I still don't think there's a ton. I know there was the straw for Bogarts one.
Yeah. No, there's more. There are about 6 of them.
Oh wow.
All right, so
Straw for Bogarts was the first. That's again, neither of us would have kept Bogarts, so there isn't a ton to say there.
yeah, I mean, sure, I'll give it a C plus because you kept Bogarts and you probably shouldn't keep Straw, but I
the next one hurts though. Oh, the next one hurts.
I wouldn't keep Bogarts either.
The next one, see, the next one's where he just fucked up. I gotta say it. I mean, Crone and Clase are both, I think, keepers. I think Crone, I know first base is loaded. You could argue you didn't really need to keep him, but Clase, is, I would argue, now the number one closer in fantasy baseball, I would say. And I wouldn't have taken three guys for one for him. Like I just wouldn't have. And you get like, oh my God, I think he fucked up. Plain and simple. F.
Yeah,
F.
D minus.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't have kept Albies, we wouldn't have kept Perez. And Suarez is fine, but you flipped him into the minor pieces that you flipped him into. And yeah, I mean,
that was one of the
Corona's
biggest head scratchers of the offseason. I mean, I remember this
Corona's
one now that I
decent.
saw it.
Corona's decent. But his home road splits are pretty vast, and he's not getting any younger. He's got some bad knees. I don't know. I don't think he's going to put up the numbers he put up last year. And I mean, he has to play all his good games in court. It's almost like he's unstartable on the road. It's really bad if you look at his home and away splits.
Oh,
And then Class A, obviously Class A is an asset, and he's very on a bargain. He's on like a $14 contract or something. So, yeah, I mean, a D minus for that one. Eduardo Escobar for Justin Turner, F both ways because you didn't keep either one of those guys. So why even bother?
yep.
So then Suarez, Nicholas for Montgomery and Rosario. We already talked about this one from both sides. I thought that it was I guess we didn't talk about it for Bryce's side. What do you think about it for Bryce's side? What grade do you give him?
I like the Montgomery Rosario side more.
All right. So you give him like a B or something?
Yeah.
That's fine. I'll agree with you. Then he traded away Carlos Correa, got back Urquidy, Wood, and Mountcastle. How many of these guys did he keep?
Oh man. And
Mountcastle?
me and you are kind of the same wavelength of Correa, where I also don't value him at a huge contract or anything like that for fantasy, but I think he's only $16. And again, I think you just keep Correa there over those other guys. I think
Shortstop's so
Urquidy's,
thin.
what's that?
The shortstop's so thin, and that's
And
what
shortstop,
Justin was
yeah.
focused on because Justin's like, I don't want to go into this draft without a shortstop and get fucked and have to spend all my money on a third baseman already. I can't also afford to spend a bunch of money on a shortstop going after Tim Anderson or whoever.
It's rough,
So,
yeah. I just
so
don't think that's a good one.
yeah, and he only kept freaking what's his name, Mountcastle, and I wouldn't have kept Mountcastle either because he's hitting in Baltimore and he's not that good. I like the player, but I don't like the situation. I just don't think
Right.
he's good enough to overcome that, that ballpark there, being a right-handed hitter in Baltimore.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I'm gonna give him a D minus for that one because he traded away Correa, who's an asset to some, and got back Mountcastle. Maybe he wasn't planning on keeping Correa, but with the other players he's keeping, like Albies and those other Bogarts, like why would you not keep Correa?
Right.
So then the big one at the
Uh,
buzzer, traded away Lodolo and Schwarber and got back Acuna, Kershaw, and Eflin. Go ahead, Eric.
this is just another one, and this is going to be one of the weird ones where I'm not sure I really love it for either team. It's kind of one of those where I'm just like, I just don't really know if I really. I see where they're coming with this, but I think Bryce had more holes to fill where I think he needed to not eat salary. I think he needed to have salary. And that's
Yeah.
why I think Schwarber, if you can sit there and say he's 40 bombs, $19. Lodolo might be a top 100 pitcher this year, $4. Boom, boom. And I have more money. But he took on that money, and I didn't understand it. But in the same breath, even with Krim, and I guess we'll wait till we get to his side. I wasn't a fan really of the trade overall.
Yeah, I don't really know what to think about this trade. I just want to look up something really quick. If I look up like pitcher, so in the same vein, we draft 7 pitchers. So 7 times 14 is 98. So if you're not a top 100 pitcher, then that's kind of where we're at. So these are the guys that get taken in auctions. Basically everything Kluber and above is our pitchers. I don't know. Let's see where Lodolo. So Lodolo's, oh wow, he's pretty high, 38. So
That's what I mean. Yeah,
I kind of like Lodolo more than Kershaw. Where's Kershaw at?
Lodolo's a nice little young piece this year, man. I'm telling you. That's why again I wasn't thrilled with the move. I mean like I said I could see it for Krim if he wanted to take salary, but I also see the value in Acuna. Um, so it's just tough. But I think from Bryce's perspective in particular, I think he has more holes to fill. Where I think holding on to more, being able to have $100 going into this draft instead of 77 would have made a big difference.
I can tell you right now, I'd rather have Lodolo than Clayton Kershaw, and I'd
Yeah,
much rather have Kyle Schwarber at his price than Ronald Acuna at his price. So
right.
I mean, I get like, hey, I need pitching. Like I'm desperate. There, you guys just got done talking about how there's no pitching available, and I went and got pitching. Why are you slandering me for it? Well, like there is some merit to that, but just in the way he kind of went about it, getting some bad values for the good values that you had. Not the way I would have done it.
I mean, he could have went into the draft with like what, 140, 150 bucks almost,
Yeah,
120, 130. I mean, that would have been almost top. And again, if you add three of those top five players to Bryce's team, now all of a sudden, oh wow, there's something, but you can't anymore. You just don't have the money.
he would have gone into the draft with more money if he would have taken my offer. I put Kevin Gausman on the table for Kyle Schwarber.
Hey,
Uh,
hey.
so he would have been in a different situation there, in my humble opinion. But so I guess we can move on from Bryce unless you have anything more to say.
No, that's about it. I feel bad for him because I feel like a lot of the time we do roast his trades. There's not often where we love his trades, but he
He's bending over backwards for Phil.
yeah. I mean, he finds a way to somehow stay in like seventh or eighth place the first couple years. So we'll see if he can manage again.
Yeah. Next we have standing alone in 11th place is new newbie, Dex, the newest of the newbies,
Hey,
who
hey.
has made one trade so far, trading away Bobby Witt for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. In this deal with where he is at, it didn't make any sense to me. I'm gonna give him a D minus for this deal. I don't know what I'll give him a D plus, I guess, because Vlad is the better player, but not by much.
Yeah, the way I looked at it, I mean, if you go on average draft position and we're a 14 team league, Vlad's basically a first round pick. And I think Witt, if I'm not mistaken, is a
Mid second.
uh mid second, 24th. So I mean, again, if it's worth the extra $20 here and there, Dexter did have the money. Now he's got Jordan and Vlad in his lineup, which is pretty damn lethal. But I understand from the five tool. Like I said, I to me it's just kind of a wash. It's like, what guy do you like more? I think Vlad's got that ceiling triple crown potential. So if you have the money to take it on, I understand it from both sides. I really do.
Before I go any further, I fucked up that last ranking. I only did starting pitching, so it's not starting pitching, it's pitching. So if we look at the top 96, it's our top 98. I mean, 14 times seven pitchers. It's actually the cutoff is really like Trevor Rogers, and
Okay.
then Syndergaard, Lang, Lopez, Graveman, Cabrera, Tyler Anderson, Sonny Gray. Like that's the kind of the cutoff we're looking at as like the last of the top guys, and anybody after that would be like reserve draft. So anybody like Carrasco. So Carrasco shouldn't even be a drafted player. You kept him for 11. Wainwright, Kopech, Tyone, who's kept by another owner. We'll get to in a sec. Cal Quantrill, Stroman, Ashby, Stripling. These are all guys that shouldn't have been kept because the average draft position says that they're not even worth $1, that they should be reserve draft guys. So that's kind of another thing that I kind of want to address before I move forward. Yeah, I mean, I just don't think the gap between what's his name, Vladimir Guerrero and Bobby Witt is that large to garner the $20
No.
difference in salary. And I think with third base being as thin as it is, and you getting that third baseman was huge for you, and we'll get to that in a sec. Third baseman, shortstop. And for him to trade away that good value and trade away those stolen bases to get a second baseman, really a third if you include Alec Bohm, like from a roster construction standpoint, it doesn't make any sense to me. And like the whole salary thing is really a head scratcher. I just don't understand why you would want to take on the $20 there. So I think you took advantage of the newbie there, and shame on you. Shame on you, sir, for
Oh
taking
man.
advantage of the
I
newbie.
know. How dare me? No, overall though, like talking about his team, I actually think there's in a similar way of Chad's team when we get to in a little bit. Dexter's got about 70 or what $76 to play with, where his lineup really, Will Smith, one of the best hitting catchers in baseball. Anthony Rizzo hit 34 home runs last year with that short park in Yankee Stadium. I think he could do it again. McNeil is a big on base percentage guy. Winker, big on base percentage guy. And then Jordan and Vlad, you're talking maybe possibly again in a world where you're talking 90 95 home runs from those two alone. So I really don't mind this lineup at all. I don't think it's great. I think you're an injury away from really missing somebody. But then you go to the rotation. Zach Gallen, I think, is very, very much underrated. I think he's a very, very good pitcher. Michael Kopech, um, last year was his first year fully getting that start. His strikeout numbers were a little down. I'm waiting for a bounce back year, but I have no problem with $15. I think May might be one of the best B values this year. And then you have Romano, which we know what he did closing last year. He should be a closer on a 90-95 win team where you can kind of lock that in. I
Mhm.
think Dexter's team has a decent amount of balance where with $76, if he goes up there and bids 30-35 on a couple guys to fill a couple more holes, I don't really think Dexter's team's that bad.
It won't be that bad. Yeah, it's got definitely got talent. It's got some upside. I like Winker, and as you said, he's got the big boppers. Trading away his speed makes no sense. Like, I don't know why he didn't really need more power, and to trade away the speed from Bobby Witt again, is another thing that didn't really make a whole lot of sense. He doesn't have any aces. I mean, Gallen's good. I mean,
Gallon is Gallon. I think you can. I think he's an ace, dude. Gallon's an ace, man.
what
He
is an
is.
what is an ace?
Go look at his numbers.
I
Just
know,
click on
but
his.
what is an ace? Because is an ace a top 12 guy? Because he's
I
not a
would say
top
an
12 guy.
ace is if I think you're very much an ace if you're striking out almost a batter an inning. If your ERA, dude, a 2.54 ERA, how many guys even had under a 3 last
He's
year
the
that were
29th
starters?
pitcher off the board. The
That's an
29th
ace.
pitcher off the board is an ace?
Yes. I'm not saying every Major League Baseball team has an ace, but theoretically, every team has a number one starter. I'm not saying that doesn't mean that some teams don't have two or three, but theoretically, if we said there's 25 to 30 aces, there's one per team. Yes, I would say Luis Castillo, I would say
I
yes,
guess I
is
guess
an
Mitch
ace.
Keller is an ace too, because he's gotten the nod
Well, that's what I'm saying.
for the
There's some teams
Pirates.
that have multiple, some teams that don't, but I'm just saying, like, overall, I would. How do you look at those numbers he put up last year over a K an inning, an
He's very
under
good. I
one,
love the guy.
dude, hold on, an under a .9 WHIP. He's an ace.
Yeah, but
He's an
can he be the best pitcher on a contending fantasy team?
Yes, I think he could be.
No, he
100%.
can't be the
Yeah.
best pitcher. Because if he's the best pitcher at 29, that means that your best pitcher is the 29th overall. You would have to have the 29th, the 30th, the 31st, the 32nd, and the 33rd if you want to be relevant.
Yeah, but I think Dustin May is another guy again in that rotation. I think Michael Kopech with another year starting, his rotation's a lot better than I think you're
Why
giving it
is his
credit for.
strikeout number so low, Kopech?
I don't know. The K numbers, dude. I don't know what. I know he wasn't in the bullpen
That's
anymore.
tough. Why can't he not sit anybody down?
Well, why can't he what?
Why can't he sit anybody down? Why can't
I
he
don't
sit
know.
anybody out?
I don't know what happened to him, dude. I don't. We'd have to ask the close White Sox fans because if you look when he came out of the pen, dude, 69 innings, 103 Ks. Last year,
joining us for this.
yeah, 120 innings, 105 Ks. And I know coming out of the bullpen and starting is different, but that's kind of scary.
Yep. Yeah, not a big fan of those numbers. And to keep for 15. I mean, you throw him back, you're gonna say
I don't hate it.
He would go for more than 15 if you threw him back.
I think with who's here and with the upside of Kopech, I really don't. And again, with how much money Dexter has, I don't hate him keeping Kopech because I
We're not
do
talking
think
about Dylan Cease here. We're talking about.
I know, but I think there is a world where yes, I think Kopech's an all-star pitcher this year. I mean, he's 26 years old. It can happen. I don't. It's not shocking. I don't think so. I like that. I think Dexter's team can surprise, and I think with $77, you said he needs steals. Okay, we don't know what the prices are going to be, but if he went and got Gunnar Henderson and Corbin Carroll, spent 35 each on him, spent his money, boom, that lineup looks good. I believe in their rotation. All of a sudden, Dexter's team, I think, is honestly, like I said, pretty solid.
You heard it here first, folks. All 2023 All-Star Michael Kopech and Ace Zach Gallen
Looking out for it.
leading Dex's team to the promised land this year. This next one it's gonna pain me. This man is not gonna be happy. He's been looking forward to this.
We're on number 10 now. Is this 10?
He's been anxious. This is number 10. He wanted to join us. He's a little tied up right now. But Justin.
Ooh.
Justin, the Wahoo Maniac, new team name. I love the Wahoo Maniacs. Got the logo there. He was hoping he would be higher. I know he's going to be very sad hearing this, but to be behind some of the others. He made some trades this offseason to take on some salary. And he kind of doesn't really have the team from a salary standpoint and from a talent standpoint to really push himself into the top. And through the draft this year, he doesn't really have opportunities and chances to kind of address the needs that his team has in a good way. So, I mean, he's got some good players. He's got Soto and Rosarena and Reynolds and Castillo, but a lot of his role players are just very blah. I think you said it before the pod started, but we very well might have our new crown just a blah team. Dave's team is the furthest thing from blah. He's got Tatis,
so much potential,
Cruz and Scherzer and those guys. And this team has some crusty veterans and Goldschmidt and Cronenworth, who's excited about Jake Cronenworth, and Correa, who's doesn't really steal bases and doesn't have upside, and Reynolds, who doesn't steal bases and doesn't really have upside, and Chris Bassett, who doesn't really have upside, and Gonsolin, who outperformed his peripherals by a mile last year. And now with the banning the shift, the Dodgers were the #1 team in runs saved when hitting into the shift, and now you outlaw that. So Gonsolin's going to regress from his .87 whip that he had last year. It's not looking too good for Justin. It's a good team. He'll be around, he'll hang around, but this might be the surprise trade Paul Goldschmidt 2 months into the season team.
Yeah, my thing with Justin's team weirdly is like if you just look at it, I think it's like, you know what, that's not a bad team. But my thing with him is when I look at how much, okay, let me look how much money he has to spend. $51. And I kind of sit there and I go, I would love this team a lot more for, and I know this doesn't make sense, but if you told me he had $90 to spend instead of 51, I would just feel so much better about it because I just feel like, okay, so what can he go do? He can go in and add one more impact player,
Yeah.
right? One more big.
He needs a closer though. So
Yeah, and that's the thing, and that's what I have in my sheet here. That's what I have in my sheet here is there's a few teams that need closers, and I was going to ask if you is there a way to it's probably not too easy, but if you're going into the season and you know me and my closers and all this stuff, but if you're going into the season with one closer and it's not from a closer on a 90-95 win that you can't at least see 30-35 saves from, okay, go and get a closer that's going to get 20-25 saves. Go look where that gets you in roto on a season. 20-25 saves, you're very very much on the bottom of where you need to be in roto. So then at that point, you can't just have one closer, right? You can't have one closer on a 50, 55, 60 win team. At that point, now you got to go out there and get two closers. So if he goes and gets two closers for 12 to 15 bucks a pop, now he's down to $20 left, and that's pretty much his team. So I just feel like he's one like big bat, one big pitcher away from doing that, but I feel like he's got three holes, and that's where I feel like his team's kind of just like stuck in a rut. I don't think it's bad. I think it's got potential, but I also think I would feel a lot better if he had 30, 40 more dollars. And are you looking at the saves now just for fun?
Yeah, I'm pulling up the standings from last year so we can kind of
And that's kind of what I was going to get into with who's available. I know there's closers available. And I know people have said, well, there's closers and
there's a
they're
lot
going
of
to be
closers available.
and they're going to be a premium, but how many closers are actually sitting there available on 80, 85, 90 win teams where you can sit there and say, I think they're going to get 30 saves? Because again, we look at this list here. Okay, if you get Bednar on the Pirates, let's just say on the high end, that's 25 saves. Where does that put you?
Not well. Last
Last.
place.
So then you need two closers in the draft. So when we say there's a lot of closers, there's 8, 9, 10 closers, there's teams that don't have closers. Me being one of them at this point too, where now you can't just get one, you almost need to get two, and then to even compete roto wise. I
Yeah.
mean, you know what I'm saying? If you're going to be in the top 5 of saves in roto, you almost have to have two closers.
So like, and Justin's kind of another team that probably needs like an ace too. You know, he's got
Yes.
Castillo, but he needs probably one more pitcher in order to kind of vault him. He's probably like he's in the middle of the road. Maybe he's got like the 5th or 6th best rotation in the league. You know, maybe on a good day, maybe 4th or 5th, but that's kind of pushing it. So, but once he adds those two closers, then he's gonna have no money to spend, and
No.
like he's a team that could use I guess you can call it like a George Kirby or a Kyle Wright or whatever to kind of boost him
Balance
up.
it out. Yeah.
But he won't be Logan Webb, but he won't be able to afford it with everything else. And if
And I could also argue the same thing that he's just like one more big bat away from having one of the best offenses. I don't think it's quite there yet, but I think he's just one bat away.
Speed.
Yeah.
Where's his speed coming from? Rosarena is his only speed that he has.
Right. And who's guaranteeing that he's for sure getting and when you see those kind of low or does that say 30? So he might for sure get 25, 30 steals. But again, kind of if you do the same tool that you use with the saves, where does 40 saves for a team get you? Not very far. You almost need to have two or three guys that are getting double-digit steals.
I'm concerned about Rosarena stolen bases. He was caught stealing 12 times last year. For a team that is as analytically sound and based as the Rays are, I don't
They
know
might tell him to stop.
Let him steal. He's gotten caught stealing 12 times.
Yeah.
I don't even know if like that stealing percentage like would attribute to like a positive wins above replacement at that point.
Right. It's not good. Yeah.
Bigger bases, maybe still have kind of a hand in it. Maybe they let him run for a while and for a little bit and then see where he's kind of at. But if they haven't stopped him by now, then they probably won't. Like he got caught stealing a lot early in the year. And so like if they didn't stop him then they're probably not going to stop him. So Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of holes here. It's tough to imagine kind of this team getting into relevancy without the money to spend. You know, trades can happen, but like I said, this might be a team that might need to blow it up. This is a like I would kind of like to see Justin maybe just go, well, maybe I'm gonna try and tread water for a bit, but I'm gonna spend my $35 on Bryce Harper and kind of build towards that and have him in my back pocket. And then maybe if he's like in sixth place in 2 months, he goes, well, now I can trade Bryce Harper. Or, well, I guess that wouldn't make sense because you'd want him back at that point. But kind of somebody like that, or,
Right.
Walker Bueller, where, after a month, go, well, you can decide if you're there or you're not there. But yeah, it's not too I'm not too optimistic on Justin's team, even though he's made a lot of moves to get there. Let's take a look at some of the moves that he's made.
And that's kind of my thing, like you said, is I don't feel like there's like 4 or 5 holes. I feel like there's like 2 or 3. It's just there's just not the money to do that. And yeah, if we look at, oh geez, that's a lot, isn't there? Let's see.
Starting with the deal with Lincecum prematurely, which is Jordan,
Yeah.
where he got back Bregman, Hader, Castillo, and Rosary. And I mean, if we
Love
gave
that.
that a D minus, that has to be like an A minus.
Yes.
Okay. I don't really love any of those guys in a vacuum outside of Castillo. But I mean, when it regards to the value that he got from that trade, of only having to give up Quan, Rasmussen, and Pena, yeah, I mean, I think that's an A minus there.
Yeah, I agree. Especially he's keeping Rosarena and Castillo, and I mean, you could have kept Rasmussen and Pena to have more money, but I still like the upside of Castillo and Rosarena on that side. So,
Who are you higher on? The Pablo Lopez at his price, or you Darvish at his?
oh man, that's tough. Darvish just keeps getting older. I think Lopez, where I'm seeing in these last couple years, I think he's turning more into more of an average pitcher than I thought he would be. So
Average in a good way or average in a bad way?
I thought he would be better than he is at this point.
Yeah. He yeah, I mean, I thought he would take a little bit more of a step last year. But I mean,
It's not bad.
3.75 ERA, he had a really good 2021 with a 3.07 ERA, 1.12 WHIP,
Yeah.
but he regressed a little bit last year.
He kind
He
of
had
reminds
the
me of like a
strikeouts a
Barry,
couple.
like a Barrios. Like he's got that like that ceiling, but he's just like kind of just like he's a
Yeah.
3.7, 3.6 guy that you can count on. But I kind of thought there was going to be that next level. So if Darvish doesn't show any signs of age, I guess I would say Darvish. But it's only a matter. He's 35, right? I mean, it's only a matter of time before he starts losing what he's known for.
He did throw more innings than I expected. I think him throwing 180 innings last year is a good sign. Well, maybe he's kind of last year he kind of stretched it out. Now he's going to kind of hone it back in and get back to maybe 2021 form where he had a 3.07 ERA and a low
Right.
whip, and he had 115 strikeouts in 100 innings, so way over an inning per strikeout per inning. But then he went under a strikeout inning, only 174 strikeouts last year in 180 innings. So that's
Big
kind of
year
like
for him.
a head scratcher. So yeah, I think it's kind of a prove it year, but I like Pablo Lopez at his $11 price tag or wherever it is more than I like Yu Darvish at his $30 price tag. We got a minute and a half to get through these next couple, so I'm gonna give him a B plus for the Pablo Lopez trade. What's your grade there?
Same. I'll do B plus. Yeah.
Soto for Bassett, that's an A plus, right? Because he turned a non-closer into Bassett and an asset.
Definitely, I like Bassett. Yep, no doubt.
Teoscar for Reynolds. What do you think here? I could go
Dude,
either way.
I go Reynolds every time. I know there's this big. Everyone loves Teoscar. I know you've been a Teoscar fan. I know the numbers have been there the last couple of years, but I really like Reynolds. I think you can't go wrong with him. I think he's just a plug and play guy. And even on a better team, if he does get traded, I think the value only goes up, right? Not hitting in that Pirates lineup.
Yeah, absolutely. If he gets traded, then it's a steal of a trade. He's still solid, still great value there. If he could get with the new bases, the bigger base, if he gets to 10, 15 stolen bases,
Sure.
then it's money. But if he's not going to steal bases, he's not going to drive in RBIs, hitting in the Pirates lineup, he's not going to score runs, then he's a home run on base percentage guy. And I don't love that. Teoscar, I traded him for a reason. He's a fringe keeper, but I think in this year he's a keeper, but I could go either way. Hater from Mountcastle. I don't like either one of them, but he got Hader right back.
Yeah.
So I guess that's got he turned him into more assets, which he did here. Oh no, he did that. Man, I thought he traded Hader. He traded Mountcastle later. So he got Mountcastle, then traded him
Same
later
day.
and got Correa. So I'm gonna partner these two together and give him a B just because I don't love Correa, but he didn't really give up much.
Yeah, I think getting Correa and that I think it makes sense. I would agree with that.
Yeah. Which brings us to our next team, which is a tie, actually. Next teams tied for 8 and 9 are two interesting teams. Two teams that have made a few trades with one another. Two original guys from our original league, which is Tyler and Chris. Tyler and Chris are tied 8-9. We'll just do Chris's first, sliding into the DMs for his massive disappointment last year.
Oh man, yeah.
Made one trade this offseason. That's a little bit of a surprise. I thought he would take a little bit more of a roster overhaul this offseason. He has made one trade that he will get an absolute abominable F for from me. Taking on Garrett Cole and Freddie Freeman, trading away Vladimir Guerrero Jr. In this trade, he had one of the best assets in the league, Vlad Jr., who's probably a $50 player for about $33. It's about $17 in value. And he got back Garrett Cole, who I would not keep for 49, who he should not keep for 49. And Freddie Freeman, who is a $44 player at the deepest position, first base in the league. Another guy I probably wouldn't have kept at that value. I understand why he did it. Now I can empathize. I can go. He went this offseason. Goes, I don't have a path to getting a top rotation, and there's not many good hitters in the league. My team was so bad last year. I got to figure out a unique way, an innovative way, in order to get more talent on my team. You have to pay for it. So he's like, I'm going to take on Garrett Cole. At least I know I'm going to probably get myself into the top half of the standings with this move, even if it means not having money to spend. And Freddie Freeman's probably a better player than Vlad. Maybe they're kind of interchangeable there. And so, I'm gaining talent. I'm just taking on the salary, and there's no better way for me to do it other than doing this. But that's not a path for me I think, to win fantasy baseball leagues. So to me, it's enough.
Yeah, I'm gonna be right there with you. And the reason I say this because I would take Vlad at his price over Freeman, so that's automatic. And
they're interchangeable. And there are $15 difference.
Yeah, it's a difference. And then obviously you're adding another $50 with Cole. So Chris could have came into this draft with $100. And I think, again, with the pitching available, again, who knows how the draft works, but if he wanted to, he could have went in there and spent 30 on Webb. Then he could have went and spent 20, 25 on Wright and really kind of balanced that rotation. So I'm not really thrilled with it. And here's my other thing with Chris's team is I don't mind the lineup, but because of where some of these hitters hit in the lineup, Freddie Freeman, looking at his career numbers, Freddie Freeman,
Mike Krim.
Yeah, fuck you, Krim. Freddie Freeman's only had 100 RBIs once or twice in his career. Bo Bichette hits second in the Toronto lineup. He's not probably going to get 100 RBIs. Might get close. George Springer is the leadoff hitter. He's not going to get 100 RBIs. And when you look at every single one of those guys, again, Freddie Freeman's also not been known as the power or like a super big power hitter. I actually think Chris's team lacks home runs and RBIs. I don't think his lineup's bad, but I don't sit there and look at anybody. I can't sit there and say without a shadow of a doubt, any of those guys are 30 home run guys. I think a couple of them can be there.
And Springer, made more sense to have Vlad to kind of drive them in.
Yes. And that's what I'm getting at. I just think the RBIs, yes, Freeman in that lineup might hit 100 RBIs, but in that lineup, because of how good it is, he might miss chances and get 80, 85. Like, I just feel like he's missing home runs. He's missing RBIs. I like the rotation a little bit more than you because I'm a little on the high end on Chris Sale. I will say, I think as long as Chris Sale is on the mound, I think he's going to be a very, very much a surprise.
Big quantifier.
I know. But I think if Chris Sale is on the mound this year, you pair Peralta, Sale, and Cole. I'm gonna be honest. Yeah, that could be nasty if Sale is on the mound. But other than that, I think there is just too many holes for Chris. And again, that trade could have given him $100 instead of 47 to go into the draft with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of would like that better. And like he's like the team that like a guy like Miles Mikolas would make too much sense on this team, or a guy like Pablo Lopez. Like those guys that have traded that are like not like bad strikeout guys, but maybe like slightly below average, like maybe slightly below, a strikeout inning, just to stay good in strikeouts, but you could get the ERA and the whip then to kind of balance everything out. Like those are the guys he should be targeting. And maybe he can find that in the draft with the limited budget that he has, but that might be all he would be able to spend his money on.
Right.
Maybe like Kyle Wright or somebody like that. I mean, who would be a guy that we could see here that, would be a good ERA and whip guy, but maybe, gets knocked because of strikeouts. Edwin Diaz is not getting drafted anymore. Yeah, I guess like a Logan Webb, would make a lot of sense.
And that's what I'm saying. Spending, I feel like 25, 30 on a Logan Webb while also being able to do that again on another pitcher would have just been better than the overall Garrett Cole acquisition, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, I would have to agree with you. And he'd still kind of have, he'd still have a good offense, a decent pitching staff, and he could still kind of build from there. But Yeah, that was kind of a head scratcher where now he's doesn't have a complete team. He
And
needs a
is Andrew Vaughn like
closer.
look at Andrew Vaughn's numbers. I know he's pretty much had, I don't want to say two full seasons in the bigs, but 127 games, 134 games. I would argue that's two full seasons in the bigs. Is he even a one category contributor right now?
Not really, no.
I mean, even a one. I mean, you're talking like bare minimum. Like, okay, I could maybe play him this week, but he's not hitting the 30 home runs.
He's Andrew Benintendi without stolen bases.
Right, he's not getting the 100 RBIs. Oh, by the way, his OBP's not 350, 360 refill. Like, was he worth keeping even at $8? Maybe with the upside, but it's just
White Sox fan, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess Andrew Vaughn, I expect him to take a little bit of a leap, but I don't know. It's tough. $8 is he's not going to kill him if he's good. He's not going to
No.
kill him if he's bad. It. I think he's going to take a little bit of a leap this year just because I think that playing DH isn't for everybody and trying to teach him to play outfield and then focus on his bat. I mean, he's been a solid hitter at every level. He's got the prospect pedigree to be solid, and I kind of like him. And I think getting him at first base for the first time this year and getting him comfortable there, I think will do well for his comfort level in the box and his bat. I think it'll have some good ramifications there. But yeah, I mean, he's still offense still going to be decent. His pitching staff is going to be decent, which is why I think his team will be decent. But that's also why we find him at a decent spot at number 8 and 9. Nothing really stands out about it.
And that's kind of the interesting thing too, is I know we're going to get into the team 8 here and all that, but Chris has $47. We've not even talked about certain teams that have 96, 100,
That's got to go
$150.
to a closer.
Yeah, that are higher in the rankings already. I mean, I know these are only our opinions, but it's one of those things like he doesn't have money and he's lower than these teams that have more money than him.
One of those teams that has a little bit to spend is Tyler. And he's got a little bit. He's made some moves to kind of take on some salary, but Tyler's going to have $83 to spend. Let's go to Tyler's transactions that he's made this
He's had a little bit busy of an off season here. Well, not too bad.
He's only made one since the last podcast.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Which was his Logan Gilbert and Hunter Renfroe for Kershaw and Mountcastle. So he gave up Kershaw, Mountcastle, got back Renfroe and Gilbert. What is Renfroe's contract looking like?
He wasn't kept, was he?
What was he? Okay, he wasn't kept.
I don't think
he was.
so.
I think he was like a $20 player.
It was 20. It was around $20. My thing with that trade is if you can give me 100 or 40 or 150 innings out of Kershaw, I think I'd take that over what Gilbert gives you. Personally.
Not at the salary. Not at $24 versus $7.
But I mean, the numbers are significantly better, right? I mean, what was Gilbert last year? Was he a high threes? Was he
go by the numbers last year, but you're also discounting the fact that Logan.
3-2.
Logan Gilbert is 25 years old, and we expect him to get a little bit better.
I forgot Gilbert. I thought Gilbert was more of a high threes. No, I would. Yeah, you're probably right. I would take Gilbert with that salary over Kershaw. I think you could argue either or, but yeah, you'd probably take Gilbert.
Which, had I known that I could turn Clayton Kershaw into Logan Gilbert a long time ago, that would have been ideal. Yeah, I mean, I think Logan Gilbert's one of the best pitching contracts in the league. Yeah, he's solid. I don't. He's not going to knock your socks off with the strikeout numbers. His ERA, his WHIP, they're all just kind of slightly below average, really in every spot. He's going to need a close to 200 innings pitch if he's going to contribute in strikeouts. Only 174 strikeouts and 185 innings, so under strikeout in innings. So he's going to need to get volume, which hopefully he can do. But yeah, I like that value at 7. I thought that was a good trade for him. Clayton Kershaw, I got rid of him for a reason at 24. I just don't think you can count on him. $24 might not kill you, but if you only get 120 innings out of him, with all the added injury risk, I don't think it was worth it. Mountcastle, I don't know why.
Here nor there. Yeah.
So much. And then and Hunter Renfroe was passed back. So even though he did throw Hunter Renfroe back, I'm still going to give him an A-. I like him an A here because I like Logan Gilbert a lot more than I like Kershaw.
Yeah, I feel like that's fair.
All right, so let's go into Tyler's team. Who had Tyler higher? It was kind of I had Tyler slightly higher than you did.
Okay.
And you had Chris higher than I had Chris. And so that's how it kind of balanced out. So I'm a little bit higher on Tyler's team. I like the moves he's made in the offseason as a whole. I mean, adding Julio Urias, Brandon Lau, sending out Cortez Marsh, adding Arenado Kershaw, sending away Rasmussen Detmers Voit. I kind of like some of those moves to add the talent that he has. He's kind of got one of the sneaky best rotations in the league. I mean,
yes.
Fried, Valdez, which, like I said, it's these guys are aces, I guess. They're in the
They
same zone.
are, dude.
In the
They
same
are
zone.
aces. Yes, they are.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And he's got an okay rotation, but he needs to have
Oof.
three of them. He has Valdez, Freed, and Gilbert, who are all in that range. But the difference is then he's got the wild card, which is Julio Urias. So to have those four, where Urias is leading the way as like a top 15 guy, um, I like what he's got going here with the pitching staff. I think this is probably like a top 3 or 4 pitching staff in the
It
league.
is. It
Um,
100% is. Yeah.
the lineup leaves a lot to be desired, and the adding Arenado is interesting because obviously Arenado and Pete Alonso provide the power for this team, but he's got a lot of salary locked up in these three players, Lau, Arenado, and Alonso, which I just wish that having this rotation with all these values here, I wish that he had a guy that was a little bit more of a bargain that was providing some of those stats. But like I got rid of Arenado for 36 for a reason. He's a borderline. I think with the shallowness of third base, I like it. I don't love it. I think he's still probably a keeper, but just wouldn't be for me. Brandon Lau for 22. I wouldn't have kept that just
Uh-uh.
because too much of a salary for a guy that's got a lot to prove. Didn't have a very good year last year. And Pete Alonso, obviously, he's going to keep the polar bear. Not stellar value. It's still good value. Obviously a keeper, but for 34, it's not like it's, you can find Christian Walker who does about 80% of what he does for, for half the price. But, so the first base is kind of weird like that. So I don't really love those values, but I think he's going to need those guys to play well. And with that being said, he's going to obviously need to address the offense. He's going to need to add one of those, outfielders. And if he were to add like a Luis Robert, where do you think his team stands?
And I think that's really what he's got to do because, well, the first thing is even though he drafted 6 closers last year, whatever it was, he still does need to fill up a closer spot, which is probably going to take up some money. But you're right. He should have about $60, $70 to play with to really fill out that offense. I
Yeah.
think he needs to go after those top guys to really fill out this team because I do think you're right. I think there is potential here for Tyler to be a playoff team. I think the rotation is top 3, top 4 without a doubt. I know you haven't even really mentioned Mackenzie Gore. I know he's borderline 100th best pitcher, which put him at about a $1 player, but I think that's a brilliant keeper with the upside possible. He's going to be in the rotation right away. Why not just have him? And he could even elevate that rotation even more. So I really like that. But really, he's stacked. I mean, even Ranger Suarez, if you told me he's your 4th or 5th best starter in your rotation, I don't
Yeah.
mind that at all. I really don't.
Not for
So
me. Not for me.
yeah, Brandon Lowe, like I said, I would not have kept him if you look at his 2021 numbers, sure, but I just think with the injury last year and everything, I just think you got to throw him back just to add more money in that. But Haniger, San Francisco offense, Yastrzemski, San Francisco offense. We'll see how that is. Riley Green's got a lot to prove here. Being a former top prospect, we'll see what he does. But you're right. It's Alonso, it's Arenado, and then you need a lot more after that. And that's where I think we're in that gray area. So Tyler's one of those guys with a good draft. I think we could see him jump up to 5 or 6 in
Yeah.
the standings. But I think with a bad draft, if we don't like the moves he makes in the auction, I could also see it where we're like, no, you're 9 or 10 in the standings.
He is going to need to what is going to need to happen with him is he's going to need to like hit on like a closer, maybe in like the reserve draft, or get a guy like a cheap guy, because he needs to spend though. If he can spend that, turn that $60. Well, how much do we say he has? He's got 83.
Yeah.
So I mean, if he can go closer for cheap, and then he can go Tim Anderson and Luis Robert and get the speed that his team is craving, now we're talking. And then the $1 catcher,
Right.
still the utility. Now he's got a little bit something cooking. Now he's got some solid balanced offense. He's got power. He's got speed. And he's got a top pitching staff. That's kind of a path for him to kind of get into the top. And that's why I put him ahead of some of the folks, ahead of guys like Justin, where the path is clearer for him to kind of get into relevancy with the good pitching staff and the actual money to spend and the path to get there.
And the thing with Fried, I mean, we're talking Fried has an elite ERA. Gilbert, we just saw at a 3.2 ERA, which in today's baseball is pretty damn elite. Julio Urias had a 2.16 ERA last year, and then Valdez had a 2.82. I mean, we're talking some absolutely elite level ERAs and whips
Not just
coming from
above
these
average,
guys.
right?
Yeah. So I think Tyler's looking really good. Where, you know what, after the draft, if he still doesn't like his offense, there's nothing stopping him from going, you know what, Urias is on the block or Fried's on the block and still making those moves. So I think Tyler is in a good position. It's just, does he make the right moves?
Yeah, I would like to see him keep pitching as a strength and try and identify sleeper hitters
Yes.
through the draft and through free agency. But yeah, I mean, I could see that path too if he kind of runs out of patience and gets frustrated with it. So that brings us to, as the last thing I was gonna say is, if there's ever an auction to need speed in, it's this one, because this auction is littered with speed. Even he
Yeah.
could be adding just guy like Mondesi, or one of or Jorge Mateo, to try and get him 40 steals, to just throw in a utility for $1 at the end or in the reserve draft. Could be a guy that like maybe
Yep.
has power built up with Lau, Alonso, and Arenado, where he can afford to take the swing on a guy like that, where maybe, Mondesi's not going to add much in the power department, but it would make sense for him. Coming in at number 7, we have Chad's team. So
Hey,
Chad,
hey.
one of our bottom dwellers for a while,
Yeah.
looking to hopefully take a stamp here and join the elitists of joining the money, maybe, but I don't think it's going to happen for him this year. I think he's still got his work cut out for him. I think he's still too far behind the 8 ball, but his team has
Man,
upside.
it does.
The rotation has loaded with upside. We know what Flaherty can do. Obviously, DeGrom could be the pitcher number 1. Wouldn't surprise anybody. He is the best pitcher in baseball. He's the best pitcher of the last 30 years, in my opinion. He is the best pitcher ever, in my opinion. But that's just neither here nor there. I don't think no pitcher ever has thrown a 102-mile-an-hour fastball, had the 92-mile-an-hour slider, and all the off-speed offerings that he has in the arsenal, and the results that he has had in short stints, keyword short stints, because he can never stay on the field. But if he can stay on the field, he might have something. Glass now, if he's already hurt, shocker. Jack Flaherty, when he has been on the mound, he's been good, but again, he hasn't been on the mound. And Christian Javier, a lot of people are saying a lot of good things about Javier. He's got him for $2.
Probably the best $2, probably the best under $5 contract in the league.
I think Spencer Strider.
I think you'd go either way. Yeah, I think it's close.
Toss up there.
Yeah, I think but that's up there.
So I mean, a rotation that has so much upside. His hitting doesn't have as much upside, but
I disagree, man.
I like here. Just guys that I like, not love. Go ahead. Go ahead and wax poetically about the upside of its lineup.
Dude, I honestly, like, you hit it with the pitchers already, so I won't go too much on that, because Flaherty and Glasnow, that is a huge question mark, and I totally get that. But if Javier and DeGrom are on there, that's about as 1-2 with fantasy as anyone else. I mean, really, if DeGrom and Javier give you 170, 180 innings, Chad doesn't really have to worry a ton about his rotation. Oh, and he's got Flaherty and Glasnow, who I'm going to use that word again, when they are on the mound, are aces. So, I mean, there is a lot of upside there. And honestly, this lineup, let's talk about the fact real quick, because we kind of talked about this pre-show. Like, are we doing these rankings with kind of counting how much money they have, what they don't? It's kind of tough. Chad has $115. Okay. Now, I know he's got to fill out 3 rotation spots. You probably want some depth there with the injury concerns. But man, oh man, I would say Chad right now, with the keepers he has on his offense, the fact that he only has to fill 1, 2, 3 spots on the offense, I think he's got a top 3 or 4 offense right now. I mean, I really do. I think Happ is a very good value at $8. He's going to be hitting in the middle of the order. Santander is going to be hitting in the middle of that order. Varsho in Toronto, hitting in that 1 or 2 spots, probably going to score 100 runs, steals bases. I don't know why that his projections say 31 home runs by Fantrax, but that's what they say, and that's bonkers to me. Jazz Chisholm, again, on the field, is a 25-25 guy. Nate Lowe in that Texas lineup was really surprising last year. Nate Lowe is one of the best first baseman values in baseball right now at that price in that lineup. And Gabriel Moreno, we'll see, he's going to be splitting time a little bit, but at that price, $2, even you can't scoff too much at that with what he's going to bring. I really like Chad's lineup. Throw in the fact he's got $115, he could go in there, and if he wanted to, and that's why I think Chad's got the biggest chance to change the way the league is this year, or just kind of go in there and shake things up. Because if he wanted to, he could go in there and spend 40 on Gunnar Henderson, 40 on Corbin Carroll if he trusts his pitching, and all of a sudden that lineup, I think you could argue, is top 2 in the league. I really do.
Yeah, I think I need to reel you in a little bit here.
All right, do it. Let's hear it.
First of all, let's start with Gabriel Moreno. Gabriel Moreno is not even the catcher 1 for Arizona. That's Carson Kelly. So
that won't last long.
Yeah, we'll see about that. They are paying Carson Kelly. They believe in Carson Kelly. I think they have a 3rd catcher on their roster too. I don't know how much Gabriel Moreno is going to actually play. I mean, he's going to play. He's their prospect. They're not going to have him on the roster to not play. But he's not going to get the kind of at-bats that a regular full-time catcher like a Salvador Perez is going to get, or anybody else. And DH, I think that Lourdes Gurriel is going to play a lot of DH for them in Arizona as well. So I don't think he's going to have the opportunity to play DH like a lot of other catchers will. Nate Lowe, he's solid. I like Nate Lowe. For $7, he's good. Not great at anything, but good at most things. Jazz Chisholm can't stay on the field. I like him. He's got a lot of upside. Moving him to the outfield, moving an injury-prone player to center field. I don't know why they did that, other than they just decided they wanted to sign 16 second basemen in the offseason. And even though none of them are any good, but I don't know why you'd make an injury-prone guy you're all of a sudden your center fielder.
If you look at his numbers real quick, though, I know it's 60 games, so you can't quite times it by 3. That might be a little much. But if you look again, I know it's a whole if on the field thing. Jazz Chisholm was close to being on pace to 40 home runs and 30 steals last year.
Yeah, I mean he's a 30-30 guy more than likely if he plays 150 games.
Right, that's the key.
And moving him to center field, I think is going to help with that.
Your favorite guy next.
Lindor, he's fine. He's a very good player. Very good. Wouldn't pay 41 for him. Ian Happ, contract year, probably going to be a breakout year. 8 is not as good of a value as you think it is. I don't know what his actual projected value is. Maybe in on-base percentage league, he gets a little bit of a boost because he does draw a lot of walks. Santander still hitting in Oakland or in Baltimore. He's solid, but I would obviously one of the best dollar players that we have. Dalton Varsho cannot hit left-handed pitching. I don't know if you know this, but he really struggled with left-handed pitching, and they still have Alejandro Kirk. I think he's going to be outfield only.
He's barely going to catch. Yeah,
I don't think he's going to catch it all. And I mean, they have Brandon Belt out there. Well, he's going to hit righties, I think, and but I don't know if he's going to hit lefties all the time. I think they're going to give him a shot, but I mean, maybe Crimmy, if Crimmy you're around. Crimmy is Varsho. I know the plan right now is play him every day, lefties versus righties. But is there a guy that Toronto has that could platoon with him if he keeps hitting lefties the way that he is?
I don't think so.
Let's go to roster resource really quick here.
And it's kind of funny too that Chad has Moreno and Varsho on the same team though, and they're in the same trade. That's kind of
for me to keep Moreno when he has Varsho is like the number one catcher because he's catcher eligible. So why keep the second catcher?
I'll say this coming up, and I know you love catcher projections and hitting and all this. Moreno came up very much prospect wise is known as being a way better hitter than Kirk. So I think Kirk's year last year was like, wow, he could do that. And so Moreno's even better. So that's the projections, but obviously Kirk's done it and Moreno hasn't. So, I mean, that's the difference. But yeah. Moreno, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, so looking at this, it doesn't look like there's a guy on their bench a righty that would take at bats away from Gabriel Moreno, unless they could move Espinal to second and Whit Merrifield into the outfield. I guess is one thing that they could do, but that's kind of a lot of shuffling. So maybe he does, but I mean, can we pull up his splits here?
Could you imagine Varsho hitting 6 in that lineup though, man? He might get 100 RBIs.
Lefty versus righty. He hit 221 versus lefties last year with a 251 on base percentage.
That is pretty brutal.
So I'm not completely sold on him, but I think he's a very good player. If he only plays 130 games because he gets platooned, then I don't know how much value he has. And Wander Franco hasn't proven to be a fantasy asset yet, although he's a very good baseball player. I don't know what he's contributing fantasy.
He's key to Chad's team this year. I think Wander Franco, if he does turn into that 25-25 guy, that makes a world of difference.
Yeah, he could be. But yeah, I think you're right. I think if once he spends that money, if it's Gunnar Henderson, if it's Bregman, if it's whoever filling that, he's going to have one of the best offenses. I don't think it's like the best. I don't think it's necessarily top 3, but it has upside. But as we've kind of been talking here, I mean, we're talking about everything that has to go right. DeGrom has to be healthy. Glasnow has to get healthy and then stay healthy. Flaherty has to stay healthy. I don't even know if he's pitching. I think he's finally starting to throw regular innings.
And remember, Chad threw Cobb back because he wanted to go in with more money. So it's interesting to think like, okay, he could have $30 less. He could go in. Would you feel better right now, Chad, going in with $81 with Alex Cobb on the roster?
You mean Webb?
Or Webb, yeah. Sorry, I get them mixed up all the time. Would you have done that?
A little bit, but I think he could probably just get him back for something similar. So I'm not
okay. Okay, so you're Chad's team based on what you see on the offense and the pitching depth. What do you do if you're Chad in the draft? Do you go in and do you secure that pitching and say I need that just backup plan, or do you just go all in on offense and just kind of trust the pitching?
Yeah, I think he's definitely going to need inning eaters. He's going to need guys that he can throw out, guys that have proven kind of track records of being healthy, maybe some veterans out there. He's going to need a closer. I don't know why he threw back Bednar, but I guess I don't know either. I would have kept Bednar and thrown back Moreno. That one didn't really.
Yeah, maybe.
And that would kind of make things even better for him.
Just for fun though, Kyle, because I know it's a topic we love talking about. Lindor goes back in this draft. He still goes for close to 40, you believe, right? I mean,
yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, like obviously the upside is there, but I think we're talking everything having to go right in order for to talk about Chad being a top three. It could happen, but I mean, we're talking a very low probability of everything going right for this
Right.
team.
And this is a guy that had Kalenic on his team. He had Adele on his team. I mean, he was really trying to ride that prospect train, but it's turning a corner. It is.
Yeah. Let's take let's grade his transactions. Only made one, which was he traded away Kepler, Carlson, Neflin for Lindor.
I don't hate it
Um,
because the only guy that was kept was Eflin, right?
yeah, looks like it. Eflin was the only one that was kept for Lindor.
So I don't hate it.
Made sense for him because, like, if you look at the talent level, he can't. There was no Lindor available in the auction, so I get it from that standpoint. But again, it's Lindor's not my kind of guy for 41.
Well, it's just crazy to me too. Like, and I can kind of see your point. Like, if he threw Lindor back, he could go into the draft with $156. I mean, like, he could,
That's what
and that's
I
why
would
it's
have Bednar and thrown back Lindor and just redrafted him for
right.
41.
And it's kind of interesting because when like that's why when you started off with that question, which I think was a good one, like who can really change the draft? I really think it's Chad. If he wants to go in there and really overpay for guys to sure things up or whatnot, Chad's in a really interesting position heading into this one.
I don't think he needs a guy like Gunnar Henderson though, because I think he needs more floor. Like I don't think he needs to take a swing on the upside because it's just another variable. Like he doesn't need
Right.
Gunnar Henderson to win the league. I think he needs more. I think he needs
Bregman.
like Bregman instead
Yeah.
to make more sense for him. Next we have a three-way. Eric, you're riding the tricycle.
Oh,
You're
geez.
riding the tricycle with Crimmy, our other member here, and with Jay. You guys
Hey,
are all
hey.
tied, riding the tricycle together. I don't know who's on top, but you are 4 through 6 in our power rankings. We had a fourth and a sixth and a fourth, and then a fifth and a fifth. So that just for shits and gigs. I had Jay fourth, Eric fifth, Crim sixth, and Eric, you had Crim fourth, you fifth, and Jay sixth. So you were lowest on Jay. I'm highest on Jay. So let's move over to Jay's team. Let's talk about his transactions first. He is the Battling Swashbucklers. And starting with his trade of trading away Garrett Cole and Freddie Freeman for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I
Boom.
would have
We
kept
like that.
Cole. Probably wouldn't have kept Freeman. Getting Vlad, that's an A plus. Any arguments?
Nope.
Trading away Pablo Lopez for you, Darvish. It was his next deal. I don't hate it. Like you said, we could argue on who's the better value there. So I'm just gonna give it a C. If I'm gonna go to a C plus, just because usually I'll give guys the benefit of the doubt. If like there's something you see in Darvish, or if that's like I want 200 innings and 210 strikeouts, so I want to
Right.
in you, Darvish, and that's what I think my team needs. Then okay, that's what you want to do. And the reason why I'm higher on Jay is because Jay does get the benefit of the doubt because he's our reigning league champ.
He
So I'm
is.
not going to slight him and put him sixth in the power rankings like another
That's playoffs.
of mine.
That's playoffs.
Who would, how dare you disrespect the defending champ? But yeah, so I think that trade kind of gets like a C plus for me, I guess. What'd you grade there?
Yeah, I would say C plus. I mean, like I said, you can go either way. If you want Lopez and the reliability, if you think Darvish isn't going to fall off, I could see it. But Jay, kind of with some of these moves late, they were salary cap savers. I mean, the Olson Guerrero one, which we're going to get into in a second, was literally to save $11. I mean, that was the reason he did it.
Yep.
Reynolds, Teoscar, like I said, we kind of talked about that one. Reynolds, I think I like a little bit more on the field more, so I like it. But he was really trying to cut salary, and he's going into the draft with $15. So he
I
was
wish he
really
didn't make either one of these trades because his team made more sense if you just had Reynolds and Guerrero instead of having to trade for Olson after trading for Tasker.
right. Yeah, and Olson got turned into Bobby Witt. Not too bad.
Yeah, or yeah, Vlad did. So I mean, I guess I'm gonna give him a C minus altogether for the next two deals because I just think the next two didn't need to happen. I think he should just kept Reynolds and Guerrero instead of flipping him for Olson and
Yeah. And the funny thing is we ripped his trades last year right before the draft where he took
yeah.
on like the Real Muto salary and he took on this and we're like, Jay, you have no money going into the draft. We like your team, but you're not going to be able to do anything. And then he wins the league. So I mean, who knows, right? Who knows?
Let's take a look at what he's working with now. Let's wander over to his roster and I guess I'll kind of take the lead here. Like I said, I just think he gets the benefit of the doubt. He has most of the same core that he won the league with last year. Even though it wasn't a roto relevant, he still won head to head. Best catcher in the league. He's got pop. He's got a little bit of speed coming from his catcher. And a lot of guys like Buxton and Tasker are just going to chip in a few. Polanco might chip in a few, especially with the bigger bases. He's got two, maybe top 12 pitchers in Woodruff and Darvish. He's got the closer. So, even though he doesn't have a lot of money to spend, like this is still a solid core. But he's got some speed to fill and he's got some pitching to fill. And I don't know where he's gonna find pitching for $15 to kind of fill out his rotation. I maybe it'd be a little too high on Jay, but I guess I'm just giving him the benefit of the doubt.
And that's kind of what I felt too, where I was looking at Jay's team and I'm like, man, he won the league last year. Like, I don't want to slight him too much, but there's part of me that like, would you rather go into the draft looking at this? Would you rather go into the draft as Chad or Jay? I would rather go into the draft as Chad, but based on the teams. I mean, I would 100%. I mean, that's just I just would. I would
But
much rather.
I trust the owner. I trust Jay, who's
Yes.
been there, done that more than I trust.
But
Chad,
but my thing is like,
who's never been the manager of a successful team.
True. My thing is too like Corey Seager. Like I'm all about keeping players. I'm a huge Corey Seager fan, and I do think he bounces back a little bit more this year. I'm not keeping him at 36. I think you could send a guy like Corey Seager back in a draft like this year and get him for 25.
I know it'd be hypocritical for me to say I can't not to keep Lindor at 41 and Seager at 36, because it's a $5 gap, and Lindor is the better player than Seager. So yeah, I mean, me personally, I wouldn't keep Seager, but I understand why you'd keep Seager. Seager is like the
Chapman at 19.
I think that's year of. I want to talk about Seager because he's like the number one. He had 31 hits or something taken away by the shift.
Oh, wow.
The shift is going to pay dividends for him, and he played well with the shift last year with a 317 on base percentage. Wasn't great, but he still had 30.
But that's an outlier. I mean, you really look at his OBP over his career. He's been a massive OBP. But I think
that's the shift. It's how many balls to the shift. So if he gets back to 394 on base percentage he had the year before, and Texas lineup we expect to be a little bit better this year, hopefully. And I kind of like him. But yeah, I mean, he's not my kind of keeper for 36. I'd rather have a guy like Willie Adames for 15. But go ahead. What were you saying about Chapman? I wouldn't 19.
And that's the thing. And that's the thing with Jay's team is like, do I love Stanton at 21? No, but I can see it. Do I love Teoscar at 19? No, but I can like see it. Yeah. Matt Chapman, it's a lot of guys that I would love to have on my team, but I think they're almost all of them are just like slightly overpaced to where now he goes into the draft needing almost an entire rotation. And again, who knows if 36-year-old Darvish throws 170 innings this year? You need a whole entire rotation. I think you can pass by with your offense with what you have, but I still wouldn't say this is a top. Would you say this is a top 5 offense right now?
Chad's is better.
Right. And that's kind of what I'm getting at.
Bryce's is better.
It might be. And that's what I'm saying. Like, okay, you have $15. You can't make your offense better. You need to fill out an entire pitching staff. And Darvish is one of those guys you're counting on who's 36. There's a lot of questions for me. And if he does it again with $15 and it shocks the world, I'm going to be all, you know your shit, you know your stuff. But I almost ranked Jay 8 or 9, and I gave him the benefit of the doubt of ranking him 6.
Yeah, maybe I didn't think enough about it, but yeah, I believe in him. I have faith in what he's built here. But I might lose faith quickly. And it's weird because like I was always higher on Jay's. I was higher on Jay's teams last year. I always kind of like higher than it always looked. But
right. And here's the thing too, is I was kind of keeping track of average. We kind of talked about average draft position already, top 30, top 50, he's going in with $15. Okay. He has 0 top 30 guys on his team. Not a single one. While Peter is going in with $16, one more dollar. And he has 6 top 30 guys on his team. There's a massive difference there. Yes, we'll wait. I don't want to bust the load too early, but good Lord.
So yeah, we talk about transactions. So that's kind of where we're at there. So me and you both had this gentleman, yourself,
hey.
very handsome lad, and that is the co-commissioner, Eric, E-Rock's Dynasty Squad. We both had him number 5. Looking at your team, you're obviously going the stars and scrubs method. It's all going to come down to the guys that you get at the end, your dollar players. If they hit, you'll be good. If they don't, you'll be bad. I think you've built up a floor with the guys that you have here, which is kind of your goal here. But I mean, you need the $1 guys to hit in order to be successful. I don't love what you've done with your pitching rotation. Actually, I hate it. I think that Shane Bieber, who is, you know, the 42nd overall pitcher, sure, he's got upside. I don't think he's the pitcher he was a year ago. And outside of that, you don't really have anybody that you can rely on. If Severino throws 160 innings, then yeah, he'll be solid in those innings. But you can't really count on any of these guys to actually be good. Rasmussen put up numbers and put up stats in a decent number of innings last year, but he also like would be consistently taken out in like the 4th inning, which hurts your wins quality starts. That's why I guess he had 16 wins quality starts. I guess it might have been more wins than anything else, but it seemed like they were kind of only taking him out after the 4th or 5th inning. So you weren't really getting the length out of him, which kind of hinders. That's why I only had 125 strikeouts, even though he was pretty much healthy all year. I don't love the pitching staff. Plus, it's not a cheap pitching staff with Bieber at 45. Grayson Rodriguez, you don't know what you're getting. And then the offense, I mean, adding Bobby Witt helps. You have quality players. I mean, you have 3 in the top 30 or 4 in the top 31. So obviously you're going to love that. But the prices of them, and then going into the draft with limited funds to kind of fill out the rotation, to fill out everything else. I'm not loving where you're at. You're obviously above a lot of teams, but and you have a plan and you're going to do your best to execute it.
Yeah, and like I said, I toyed with putting Bieber back in or not, but I honestly think it's one of those things where if I put him back in and get him for 40, like does the risk outweigh the reward? I don't really think it does, because if I feel like my team, I think you're right. If I did, Bieber might be too high of a contract, but if I didn't have Bieber and I went into the draft having to rely on Rasmussen, Rodriguez, Sandoval, and Severino, I think I'd be in so much trouble, which is why I feel like I just need to keep Bieber. The one mistake I made this offseason, I do think, is the Woodruff deal. I don't want to say it's a complete mistake, but I think if I wouldn't have taken Bieber and I would have just had Woodruff there and not Sandoval, and I like Sandoval. I think there's a lot of upside.
You need a Brandon Woodruff for Yu Darvish here.
Yeah, and I think there is the upside with Sandoval. I really do in that Angels rotation, and he did put up good numbers last year. But I think if I could have taken that
3,
Bieber,
4 whip. And you're the whip guy. You are the guy that's like, oh, don't
I know.
sleep on whip. Always look at the whip. It's one of the stats. And then you trade it for Sandoval. It's got a 1, 3, 4 whip.
I know. Well, if you look at the numbers, but really, if you look at those numbers, though, almost every single guy is under a 3 ERA. It's just a matter of, are they going to get those innings, and are they going to, go forward and do that? And I don't hate the rotation. I do agree it's not great, but I also remember not loving Peter's rotation last year because it was a bunch of prove it guys, McKenzie, McClanahan, a lot, and they did it. I mean, they went out there and they proved it, and we're like, holy shit, you were right, Peter, we were wrong. So I'm not saying that this necessarily is the potential there, but I mean, Rasmussen, good numbers last year. Sandoval, outside of a little bit of a higher whip, good numbers. Severino, good numbers. So I like it. Offensively, I do think I'm pretty loaded. I think I could pretty much do nothing in the draft and fill it with $3-4 players, and I still think as long as there's no massive injury, my offense is going to be fine. I think I got 3 guys that are going to steal 20 bags. The OBP, there's not a single guy on my team outside of maybe Bobby Witt, whose OBP is like awful. So I really do like the. Yeah, and Simeon last year, he got off to such an awful start. Simeon put together a season last year, fantasy wise. So it's just one of those things where I feel like I could really just round out the lineup and I'll be fine regardless. And I'm going in with more money now than I thought. Obviously, Edwin Diaz was a huge loss, but with $50-$60, I could either go in and make a big splash and get a $30 guy, or I can kind of balance it out a little bit. And I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do with that.
Yeah, losing Diaz does hurt you a little bit because he is kind of the thing that takes this from being a bad rotation to being like, oh, well, okay, well, if you're getting 120 strikeouts with
yeah, man,
closer, then like, yeah, that makes more sense. So I understand that kind of hurts you a little bit.
It was huge. I don't want to say it was like, I mean, it was devastating because you're right. I mean, you're talking 120 Ks, 35, 40 saves, just a lot. It was tough.
Yeah, and what's expected to be one of the best teams in the league. So I mean, that save number last year might even be maybe a touch low. But yeah, you say, well, one injury away from this, and
it is,
and you have this guy on your team, Mr. Michael Trout.
He's in mid-season form. Him and Betts, man.
So I mean, but you're one Mike Trout injury away from being a mediocre offense. I mean, Chad's offense might be better. I mean, Bryce isn't too far behind this offense. If you get 600 at bats out of Trout and 600 bats out of Mookie, and Bobby Witt keeps growing as a player, then yeah, you'll be fine. But there's some risk built in, and the rotation has some upside. I'm not going to say it doesn't, because you have Grayson Rodriguez and some guys that are looking to keep developing. But I mean, I think you have as I was so rudely cut off by the high prices of Zoom Premium, as I was saying, yeah, one injury away from the offense being kind of back to mediocre, and you're kind of banking on a lot going right in the pitching staff. And what I was about to say was, I think we might need to change the co-commissioner's team name to the Poser. He is posing, talking about, well, it worked for Peter last year, getting the unproven guys, and well, it worked for Jay last year, getting the $1 guys at the
It
end.
did.
How about you do your own trailblazing and form your own path to victory? How about that, there, pal?
Am I
Take
the
that.
first guy to? Will I be the first guy to keep two $50 players? That's something new.
Well, Justin last year kept the same two players at 49 and 49
Oh,
apiece.
did he? Okay.
We're at 45 and 46 apiece.
Yeah. I mean, and you can't. We cannot end this, Kyle. There's no way we can end talking about my team without talking about the best catcher in baseball, Adley Rutschman.
The like fourth best catcher.
I would say fantasy wise, I bet you he's only drafted behind Smith and Real Muto, right?
Okay, so maybe third or fourth. I mean, I don't think I mean, Wilson Contreras is probably right there too. I don't know. But yeah,
Average.
Adley Rutschman had a 5th percentile outcome of being very good when he was up. Very good player. A little wrong about the time that it took him to become a good player. I'll put my hands up and say, yeah, I thought that it would take him a little bit longer to get used to. Usually with catchers, it does. The Danny Jansen thing, as I always say.
You always bring Danny Jansen up. I swear he was never going to be.
Quality hitter now. He's quality hitter now with Toronto.
Oh
but I'm still not gonna back down from taking $8 catchers. Isn't the best way to go, because what did Adley Rutschman lead you to postseason success last year? And
nobody was a second pick in the reserve, and you made sure O'Neal Cruz was for sure the number one.
And I'd rather have O'Neal Cruz on my
I don't know about that one.
And Adley Rutschman, 100%.
And Adley Rutschman, based on ADP, he's about a 5th-round pick in fantasy. Like, it's not just like, oh, catcher sucked, wait till the end. I mean, that 5th-round pick, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's okay. Let's take a look at your trades. Since the last podcast, you traded Justin Turner for Eduardo Rodriguez and threw Eduardo Rodriguez back. So boo, that sucked. Then you traded away DJ LeMahieu, got Drew Rasmussen. The ratios are good. The strikeout numbers are bad because of the lack of innings. I think he's a breakout candidate. I think he's a good pitcher. I don't know how many innings that he's going to get, but for DJ LeMahieu, you probably weren't keeping anyway. You probably have to give it an A-.
Yeah, right. I liked it a lot, and I actually offered more than that, and he only wanted LeMahieu, so I was just like, oh, okay, that's fine.
All right, negotiating against yourself. That's a bold move, Cotton. Trading away Matt Olson, getting back Vlad. I think it's like a C+. It's more of like a choose what you want. I think the value is about the same in those two. I think they offer the same things. And Olson was a little bit cheaper, so usually I like to just take the salary savings. So I'm just gonna give it a C+ if you like Vlad. But you were able to turn Matt Olson into Bobby Witt. So I guess all in all, you get 2 A- because I'd rather have Bobby Witt at his price than Matt Olson at his price easily.
Yeah, I like, and especially with me needing, I mean, the only stolen bases I might get 10 to 15 from Mookie. Simeon, we'll see if that was an outlier last year. He had 25, which was a career high. But I think getting Bobby Witt really addressed the need for steals, because I didn't want to also go into the draft needing. I know there's a lot in there, but I didn't want to go in there and have to spend money on steals if I didn't have to. So.
Yeah, I mean, steals typically go for more in the auction because a lot of teams need them, and they're kind of usually scarce. So. And that wraps up Eric's Dynasty squad. So it brings us to our third team that's tied for fourth, which is Crimmy's team, the Crims crew.
Do we go through that trade transaction thing? Do we even dare? Oh, man.
God. Yeah, thank you for the reminder, but I don't know if we have enough time for this.
1, 2, 3. We got
actually, we don't have that many.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Not
Five
too bad.
All right, first thing he did was he traded away Lindor for Kepler, Carlson, and Eflin. He traded away Lindor and got back. The only one he kept is Eflin. I'm going to give him I'd be hypocritical to give him a bad grade, but I'm going to do it anyway. D+, because I don't think Eflin is proven enough to actually be a worthwhile keeper. And to trade away Lindor, even though I don't love Lindor as a keeper, I still think he is an asset. Teams still want him, so I'm going to give him a D- here. I'm going to let you take over. I got to check on something.
Right. Yeah, it's tough with this one just because of how much he's kind of moved around in his team a lot, where he's probably going in. I mean, he probably thought differently about his team January 30th than he did March 11th when he was making those deals. So that part of it's kind of tough, but overall, yeah, I think I'd rather have Lindor, but Eflin, like you said, could be a breakout candidate this year, so I understand that. The Straw Bogarts one was the funny one because that was the one that got stuck in the inbox for months, and then
Yeah,
oh crap, I didn't realize that, but I wouldn't keep either.
me.
So Mountcastle, we talked about this one, the Mountcastle Kershaw one for Renfro Gilbert. I wouldn't keep Renfro, but I do agree with you that probably the upside of Gilbert overall was higher than that. And I think Gilbert was probably one of the better, cheaper pitchers out there. And I think there's a path where he's even better this year. So I think I would still take the Gilbert side of that as well.
Yeah,
Um, Hater Mountcastle, though, I might shock the world and say this. Crimson, and we're going to talk about his team in a second. I think this is actually a brilliant move by him because he's got two closers on his team on teams that will win 90, 95 games. I mean, he's looking at again, no closer injuries. He's looking at 70, 75 saves.
maybe, maybe he's looking at 75 saves if Hader stays in the role. If
He
he's not
will.
as bad as he was last year.
How many blown saves did Hader actually have last year? 3 or 4? I mean, that was it. It was just he got blown up in those 3 or 4 games.
He had 5 losses. I don't know how many blown saves that was.
Yeah, but I mean,
Um,
yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. I think paying that price is absurd. But again, I think in this where we're at, I think he can completely dominate the save market, which I think is kind of what your dad was trying to do when he was trying to get Clase and
mhm.
Diaz was just completely dominate that market.
Yeah, which is a viable strategy, a way to kind of corner the market on it. I can kind of see, why one would want to do that. But you not only does Hader have risk of being blown up like he did last year, Presley has had some velocity troubles and some he's 34 now. Now closers tend to age better than others, so it's not like 34 is necessarily old for a closer. They typically tend to be a little bit older. I'm a little worried about Presley kind of taking a step back, but his numbers still looked really good last year. I came back from the IL sent pitch really well, so sub 3 ERA, sub 9 WHIP, .9 WHIP. So he still was solid. I'm just a little bit concerned. I don't know if he's in that top tier of guys anymore when it comes to closers. Did he have what was his innings pitched last year? 48. His strikeout numbers are still pretty solid though. In 48 innings, 68 strikeouts. I think he's just like a tick down from kind of that top tier of closer. But I understand, why you'd want to do that. But for $28 for Hader, he's the same thing. I don't think he should have been kept last year. I don't think he should be kept this year. I mean, is Hader going to go for $28 in the auction? I mean, if you think he's going to go for 28,
You think Devin Williams goes for 20?
yeah, maybe.
Yes, I think he does.
I think I don't know if he goes more than 20. I think people are going to get to like maybe 17, 18,
I agree.
19,
But
and then
Hader's also the only guy outside of Edwin Diaz that I think you could say if he pitches 70 innings, he might have 110, 115 Ks too.
but it's not like he doesn't come with risk though.
True, true. But really, Hader, that was the only time in his entire career, and it can happen at any time for closers, but that really was the only time in his entire career where he hasn't been just absolutely elite.
Yeah, I
And I
suppose.
know, but I agree with you. I do think that price is too much. And I even remember when he was drafted at the price, I'm like, you guys are stupid. This is silly. But again, I think with the market, it's not awful.
Yeah, the rotation with those two pieces is solid. One of the best, not the best, but one of the best. I mean, Verlander, Manoah, it's a good 1-2 punch. With the closers, it's good. Lauer is surprisingly low in ADP. Nobody wants Lauer. If we look at where he's at with pitchers, LA, so he's in the range of just before Justin Steele and Kyle Finnegan and Kodai Senga and T1 Walker and Wisniewski and like Maeda and Eduardo Rodriguez. Like that's the range that he's being drafted in. So I don't know how much of an actual asset he is when it comes to that. So that's kind of that. Looks like we went over. Oh, we didn't really go through all the trades. We kind of skipped over his grade for the Kyle Schwarber Lodolo trade. I'll give him an A for the Kyle Schwarber Lodolo trade because I don't love Kershaw's price. I don't love Eflin. I forgot he traded away Eflin. And then giving up Acuna, I know was tough, but got back two surefire guys, Lodolo for $2 and Schwarber. I like the value there. But getting back to his roster, I mean, the pitching's gonna have to lead the way, kind of like it did last year. The offense will be solid when you start Schwarber, Ramirez, but it doesn't really have a whole lot after that. And whatever you're gaining and having Kyle Schwarber is just going to be subtracted with Miles Straw. I don't really understand what Miles Straw is doing on this roster, but that's neither here nor there. I mean, I hope Kermit keeps Miles Straw, but What kind of we'll see
Especially
what
with how much speed there is in the draft, even just saving $7, I just don't think. I mean, like I said, I wouldn't have kept Xander Bogaerts either, but
you can have Mondesi for free at the end. It does the same thing, and he's going to
yeah.
have more. He's not going to hit 0 home runs like Straw did.
My thing with Krim's roster is obviously he at one point he was also going in with a little money, and now with the Acuna move, he's going in with a little bit of money here and there. I know he just got Schwarber, but like you said, outside of Ramirez and Schwarber, he might not have another dude that's 20 home runs. Willie's got the potential to do it, but that's it really. I mean, Urias from Milwaukee could bounce back. I think he's a $1 candidate that I like. That I like that price and all that, but he's got some offense to fill, definitely, and I think that that's something to look at. And who knows? Verlander's 40. You just don't know. Alek Manoah, sophomore slump. I think he proved last year that yes, he is an ace. I mean, he really did prove it last year, but he's not even a strikeout per inning guy. So we'll see if he's able to replicate those numbers from last year. But I do think he needs a lot of offense. I still think he needs more power. I still think he needs more
Is he going to
stolen
be able to
bases.
address that in the auction
I
with
don't
his
know. I think the first
five
baseman's
dollars? At least he doesn't have to buy a closer. So
right. And that's where I think Crimson's in an interesting spot where I like his team and I like his pieces. But again, based on the money he has available, I'm really curious to see like what he addresses with it. Because $65, you can go out there and get a superstar, you can do whatever you want, but how does he fill the rest of those holes?
how
Because
much
if Lauer and Lodolo come out and they suck, all of a sudden, wow, I need more depth.
how much does Crimmy spend on Rowdy?
Oh, I'd hope not too much. I'd hope not more than $9, $10. That's a lot.
He's gonna have to
20
outbid
bucks.
Chris for Rowdy this year. We'll
Yeah.
see how that goes. But Chris has got Freeman, so I don't know. I don't know who's gonna win the first baseman war. I might want some Rowdy on my team. Maybe I want to get Rowdy this year. I need a first baseman.
There you
We'll
go. Heck yeah.
anything we need to add to Crimmy's team?
No, not really. Like I said, I think he's got enough money to make a play here. It just all determines what play he makes. I think he can let that closer market settle and just let people go after those closers and not even have to worry about that. Let that money fly off and kind of see what he wants to do.
If you had to put a percentage on it, what would be your percentage of odds that Crimmy's going to finish in the top 3 in Roto?
I will say 30% since I don't have him in my top 3 right now.
I'm gonna go lower. I'm gonna go 15. I mean, his team is gonna be good. It's gonna be relevant. He's gonna win a lot of head-to-head weeks. He's gonna lose some, but I'm not sure I see the path to him being a top team. I mean, with the limited salary, with the rotation is good but not elite. I don't know if the 2 closer approach. He's probably gonna trade those closers at some point during the year. Maybe pick up some offense. I would expect him to maybe do that.
And the nice thing with Hader though is if he gets off to an amazing start, again, that salary almost means
Yeah.
nothing though. So that's a huge
But
value.
it's less money that he has to spend to fill outfield and utility spots
Right.
on other guys. So yeah, I just it's tough for me to imagine that. I mean, guys in the top 3 can drop out due to injury. I mean, that can obviously happen, and he can kind of bump up naturally. But it's just I'm not sure. I like Lodolo and I like some of those pieces, but it just doesn't wow me really.
And the thing is, I love Schwarber, I do, but
Yeah.
we're Cubs fans. We know Schwarber can go through 2 3 week stretches where he's not doing anything. So then where's the offense then? I mean, it's Jose Ramirez, and then it's a bunch of guys that you're comfortable maybe putting it on the tail end of your lineup, but it's not like they're guys.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's tough. I mean, you got a 40-year-old Verlander. I mean, I like what it's being assembled here. I don't hate it, but you're right. He's got to make the right moves.
Yep. All right, so now we're going to go to the alluded, much talked about top 3, the unarguable. I don't think there's any real arguments that these top 3 are the top 3, no matter which way you slice it. And we're going to start with the number 3. Eric and I both agree that number 3 belongs to Phil. Losing some guys, could only keep 12, made some trades this offseason as he usually does. Let's go to his transactions first and take a look at some of those. Team Special K starting with 3 trades he's made since December 30th, which is trading away Hunter Green and getting back Eugenio Suarez. We kind of talked about this earlier, but this is such a head scratcher because his team needs pitching, and to trade away Hunter Green for Suarez is something that didn't really make sense at the time. I mean, yeah, he flipped him into Class A, which was solid. He'll get an A for that. But I mean, maybe if this trade doesn't happen, but he probably could have just included Hunter Green in that other trade too, the same way.
Yeah.
So I mean, this trade kind of gets a D, but the next one will get an A.
Yeah, especially and even at that tail end one too with the Carrasco and Nimmo one, I would definitely take Nimmo over Carrasco. I think that's a good move too. I think overall he did a good offseason. It's pulling teeth with him, but he gets it done when he needs to. Yeah.
He always gets the good side of the deal. There is no ripping him off. Yeah, at Nimmo, I'm not super high on Nimmo. Like I said, he's like a two category contributor, and it just for $1 I like it, not for six I like it less. So it's not here though. He's fine, but I'm not. He doesn't knock my socks off. We go to his team here, and obviously the offense looks great. I mean, it's Dansby, Austin Riley, Aaron Judge, and Shohei. Anytime you start an Aaron Judge, Shohei as your two offensive pieces you're building around at bargain contracts, $26 and $20 respectively. And then you kind of round it out with some power with Hoskins and Crone, some well-rounded, some speed with Swanson and Benintendi there, some solid on base percentages. Oh, and Austin Riley for $6, probably the best value in the entire league is Austin Riley at $6. Any arguments there?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say best value in the entire league. I mean, it's definitely up there. Are you talking like D contracts
Well,
included and
I'm
stuff?
talking like that is $40 of value because that's a $45 player that he has for $6. That's $40 of value.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely up there, no doubt about it. Yeah.
So I mean, you can talk about Javier and Strider, but I think Javier and Strider are like $30 or $40 players for two, and even then it just kind
Right.
of doesn't measure up as well. So yeah, so I mean, I really love that contract. I like some of the moves he's made this offseason. But we get to the pitching staff. Adding Class A is an interesting wrinkle. Having the best closer certainly helps you, but the thing about his team and what's going to really hold him back, in my opinion, I've told this in several conversations, is that this rotation is very incomplete. And what is the path to him having a good rotation? He's got $59 to spend, but what is $59 going to buy you when you kind of have to add two or three guys? And he needs one more top tier guy, I think, in this rotation. And so when I look at this, I'm like, well, what is the path to being like to winning the league? I'm struggling to figure out how I think he's in like a tier of his own below our last two members because I don't think his pitching is going to be there this year, and he doesn't have a path to address it in the draft. I think that's going to be a weakness. I don't think his offense is as far and away the best offense in the league like it was last year. I think there's some teams that are going to catch up to him
I
and look
agree.
at the heels. Is this the consensus number one offense in the league, like without a doubt, or?
No, I don't think so. And I don't mean bias by this means at all. I think it might be a little bit more well-rounded. I think Judge and Otani, like you said, is a great top, but I would take my offense over Phil's right now. I would.
Interesting. I mean, I think it would be close, and I think maybe your rotation isn't like really that far off either. Your rotation might have more upside than his rotation has.
Yeah.
So his is. I mean, I'm looking at comparing his roster to yours is actually an interesting kind of thought exercise. So if you like his offense better, I kind of like your rotation better than his rotation even too. Well, yeah.
It's tough because I think you have the Nolan
You
and
have
Rodon at the top. You have
And
the
you have more players where he has less, but his are more impactful. The Class A thing, if you had Diaz, yours would be.
oh man, I know.
I
Don't
think he's got
remind me.
Class A. I think
Ugh.
is over the top, and Rodon and Nola are a good one too. Mally, I don't love. And I think Minnesota's going 6-man too, which is going to bump him down a few notches too. So yeah, I mean, like, so even if you like, he'd have to spend. Let's say he spends 35 on like a George Kirby. Then okay, now he still has like a above average rotation and he has an above average offense, but then he's starting to run out of money to spend elsewhere. So what do you think about where he stands and what he needs to address in the draft? And do you expect him to win Roto this year, or is there a path for him, or what?
I definitely do think there is, and that's why I think he's trying to completely dominate that closer market, which is why I'm not totally against the idea that he goes into the draft and tries to get a Devin Williams. I think that is something that he can maybe do, to just really take on that market and just basically say I need stuff and I can trade away a closer to get it. So I would not be shocked based on that. But you're right. I think Nola and Rodon have high upside. I just have never been huge Nolan Rodon fans. I just haven't. I think Rodon obviously came on late, kind of shocked the world in 2021 with that White Sox year, and he showed it again last year. I mean, he was worth the contract with San Francisco and did it. Now he goes to New York. Now he goes to a shorter porch than San Francisco. Here's my thing with Phil's team. I think there's a lot of guys that are going to be good players, but are actually going to maybe have just lesser stats this year. I think Dansby Swanson's going to be one of those guys hitting in that lineup. Aaron Judge is, I'm sorry, call me crazy, maybe not going to hit 60 home
Yeah,
runs again.
yeah.
Shohei Otani, we'll see what happens there. But if they're out of it by June or July, who knows if he's traded? Who knows what? They're not going to let we'll see on that. We'll just see. But again, obviously a great player. I'm not trying to down any of these guys. I'm just saying,
Yeah,
like, I think there's a Reese Hoskins at $16. We talked about the guys that are available at first baseman. I think you could arguably get two or three guys in the draft that are better than Reese Hoskins
yeah,
and cheaper,
yep,
personally. So my thing with Phil's team is it's still really good. But I just think there's a lot of guys that I don't think Rodon pitching in New York's going to have a 2.88 ERA and
correct.
240 Ks. I just don't think that's going to happen.
And
So overall, the way I look at it is I like the team a lot, but it's not, I don't love it like I did last year.
yeah, and Carlos Rodon, I think he's got great stuff. I think he's one of the top pitchers when he's on the mound in regards to what he can offer. But obviously, yeah, big downgrade and going to New York in the short porch as a lefty, the short porch in right field. That was Yankee Stadium's known for is gonna kind of be tough. And then and he's hurt already. Who knows how long this was it a forearm strain or something?
Right. And
Um,
he's late April, so he's got to address that pitching. Right, he's not gonna be able to play in the first two matchups.
So, so not only does he need pitching, does he need pitching upgrades, but now he's losing his arguably his best pitcher early in the year, and he might fall into a hole. And I don't know what he's going to kind of do to address it. But I mean, I personally, I know he's always on the phones, but I've been trying to convince him to take one of the offers that I got. But I think it'd make him better to trade away some of these offensive pieces to get a more
Right.
solidified pitcher in there, because he can still address offense in the draft. He can add a second baseman, he can add an outfielder in the auction with some of his money to round out the offense. Still be a very good offense, but he needs to add one more pitcher that's going to get him 180 innings in here. I think
Agreed. And the thing is, Rodon and Nola are huge strikeout guys. So that should hold him over. But outside of that, Malley's not going to be an amazing strikeout guy. Even Class A, as amazing as he is, for you'd think being
yeah,
that ninth inning closer, he's just about a strikeout in an inning.
yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, like I said, I think there is holes. That's why when I do think Phil's the third best team, but I don't think it's as big of a gap as you think between him and like the fourth, fifth, and sixth best team. I think it's a little bit closer.
I think it's going to be a lot closer this year than it was last year.
Yes. Yep.
All right, let's go to who do you want to do first of our last two?
Oh, is it tied technically?
Yeah, it is tied because I
Well,
have
let's.
a different person one than two.
Well, who won head to head last year? Was it Jay?
Uh, what do you mean? Oh, head, yeah.
Okay, so he's the champ. I was gonna say if you were the head to head champ, we'd
I
save
am
you
the
for
Roto
first.
champ.
You are the Roto champ. We can have you go last. Let's talk about the other team first.
All right, the other team is Peter's team. You have Peter number one. I am
Oh,
Team
you have to.
Milehorn
You
at
have to have Peter number one. Tell me how you don't have Peter. You can love your own team, man. I love the whole self love thing. There is no damn way in hell that Peter's team is not number one. It's
Peter
not
has a better team right now than me.
it's not even. But the thing is, and I like your team clearly. I have it too. I don't think it's close.
Once I spend the $114 that I have compared to Peter's 16, my team will be better than Peter's team.
And that's where I'm curious because I'm obviously not going to ask you your draft strategy and everything you're going to do, but that's why I'm very curious what you're going to do with that because, and we'll get to that when you're on your team. Let's just break down Peter's team.
So Peter, obviously there's no holes here. He's got speed, he's got power, he's got great
Got
value.
everything, dude.
Rodriguez, he's got the pitching staff. So he's got no money to spend. He needs first base, catcher, and two utilities. Like probably the best positions you want to have to be able to dress in the auction. The thing I'm worried about with Peter is I'm worried about the health of some of his pitchers. I think his pitchers overperformed big time last year than what they actually are. I'm concerned about the whips of some of his pitchers. Tristan McKenzie, I'm not hearing great things about where he's kind of at. He's kind of getting lit up in spring. I hear he's kind of going to regress a lot this year for a variety of reasons. Dylan Cease gave up like 10 unearned runs in a stretch last year. I think there's going to be a lot of regression coming his way as well. I don't have all the data in front of me that would suggest that. Luzardo, I don't really know what we have yet with Luzardo. I mean, he could be great. And McClanahan, solid. He was runner up for Cy Young last year, I
Yeah,
think.
I believe so. Yeah.
So I mean, no arguments there. And Burns, probably maybe the best pitcher in the entire league. So it's going to be solid. I don't think he's going to win WHIP this year. I think he'll be first place in strikeouts again, like he was last year. He's not going to have a closer, and he's not going to have the money to get a closer. Maybe he's going to get one for his third. Now he's got $10, I think, right? He can go
Yep.
max of 11. He's got $16, so he'll go max of 11. $11 is not going to get him a solid closer. They might get him like the 10th best.
The Bednar, and again, if you get a Bednar, is it really even worth it?
Exactly. So he doesn't have a closer. So he's going to be right now. He's looking to be last in saves. He's been very stingy with the trades lately, so I don't think he wants to trade any of these guys for a closer right now. So like, I don't know how many people are racing to kind of give him whatever he wants to for a closer when he's not willing to put these guys on the table. And if he's got to trade one of these guys for a closer, then how good is his team going to be left? I mean, if he trade Glaber for a closer, he'll be a lot better. But who's going to kind of bite on that? We'll see. So I mean, overall, he's a step above Phil, step above the rest of the league. He has the best, most
whole flight of stairs above.
Best, most rounded team right now. He will not a week from tomorrow.
Dude, he's a full flight of stairs above everybody else. It's literally a tier in its own. If you're looking at the team right now, and I know, like I said, we're kind of looking at it with money. I know he isn't going in with money. Literally when I had needs written down, I did say closer times 2 because obviously in terms of a roto factor, yes, he's not going to be there. He has, like you said, if we break down how many players theoretically we should all have in the top 100, right? There's 14 teams. We should have 14. I'm going to do finger math: 14, 28, 42, 56, 70, 84, 98. We should, on average, each have 7 top 100 players.
Mm-hmm.
He has 10. 7 of them are top 50. And 6 of them are top 30 players. There is not another. The next closest guy has 4, which is me. And Phil has 4 top 30 guys. You have 2 top 30 guys. You have 5 top. I mean, it's just not close. I mean, he doesn't even have to go into the draft even worrying about pitching. He really doesn't even have to go into the draft worrying about hitting. And again, not that he can do much with his money anyway, but like really outside of saves, there is no hole. There's none. There's none, dude. I mean, the outfield is bar none. It's not even close. Tucker, Rodriguez, and Garcia, and then throw in maybe another 30 home run season from
on base percentage.
Yeah, I could argue. Yeah, you could argue on base percentage maybe a little bit. I mean, he might be a little bit lower there, but even a guy like Rodriguez and Tucker and Machado and Turner have respectable on base percentages. But even that, I think, is a little bit of a reach. So strikeouts, he's gonna. And here's the thing that amazes me. And that's why I wasn't thrilled with Peter's team last year. If you go and look at McKenzie's numbers the year before last, 5 ERA, okay, 120 innings, 5 ERA. Luzardo, the year before Peter got him, a 7 ERA. And he just knew those, bam, I trust him, amazing. We didn't believe him, and they did it. So Peter's team's just absolutely stacked, man. I know he needs a closer, I get that, but it really, the math of a 14-team league and having 6 top 30 guys is mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's great, solid.
He should technically have 2. He has 6, dude. 6 top 30 guys.
It's fine.
Machado's his 4th best fantasy player on his lineup. He would be so many of these teams' best.
He gets an F, by the way, for trading away Chris Bassett for Greg Soto.
Yes, agreed. Yes, we did have to throw that in there. Yes,
I had to throw that in there. Yeah, I mean, on paper right now, no arguments. He's the best team right now.
Let me ask you this, just for fun. Okay, let's go to your team. Okay, let's go to your team.
Do it. Burns on IPB.
Obviously you're not gonna tell me your draft strategy. What 2 or 3 guys would you pick up? Unless it's now you're thinking 6 guys as a totality. But I'm thinking, what 2 or 3 guys do you pick up where I go, now you're better than Peter?
Well, first off, I have one closer. I have one closer for $1. I will be picking up an additional closer. I was going to
say, Doval's not going to get you many saves.
I'll be spending a little bit of money on an additional closer. That'll still give me over $100 for a first baseman, 2 outfielders, and 2 utility spots. Or 3 outfielders and 1 utility spot. Of all the positions that are available, I'd love to have a first baseman. I'd love to need a first baseman and outfielders. So when you talk about all the outfielders that are available, so if I were to get a Michael Harris or a Corbin Carroll or a Luis Robert or some of those, or Sterling Marte back, using the $100 that I'll have to address my offense, I can get 2 of those. And probably a first base. If I can go 30 for one outfielder, 30 for another outfielder, that gives me still $40 left for first base and my 2 utility spots. So once I round this all out, there's nobody in this league that I would rather be than myself. I'm sorry. That's what getting some of these values, like adding some of these $1 Kirks and $1 Laureanos and $2 Spencer Striders and the Joe Ryans. Plus, I think that my rotation is the number 1 rotation. I think I will lead the league in just about every pitching category. I'll be up there in saves once I get a second elite closer. I'm pretty happy. I don't even need to have the best offense. It'll be a top offense once I add some of those pieces, but I'll have the best pitching staff, and I'll be pretty happy with it.
Well, and that's kind of what I was curious with. I don't know if you remember the conversation in the chat a couple weeks ago where I looked at your team and how much money you had, and I said you're already the second best team in my eyes. And I know it's about values, and I know you can kind of look at next year and this, but you've won. You know how to win. You're obviously, you know what you're doing. Why don't you spend big money and just say, you know what? My offense is what I need. Why don't I spend 35, 40 on two of these guys and just boom, boom?
Because well, it's a matter of what the assets are that I have to give up. Are you talking about like in a trade? Like why would I trade for like?
No, like what? Like with how much money you have, you're the second best team and you have $114. Like you're saying, that's a complete
Yeah,
luxury to have, and you
yeah.
can kind of almost do what you want in the draft. And I know who knows what kind of bidding war it is, but I said if I'm you, and I said this a couple weeks ago in the chat, I said I would spend a 40 on Harris and a 40 on Carroll, or a 40 on. I would get two of those guys instead of trying to fill it out with a bunch of $15, $20 guys. I think your team would be so much better getting two of those elite guys, pop, than trying to like fill it out with five or six. Because I think based on your offense, if I'm breaking it down, Altuve is good. Devers is good, obviously. Adames is probably one of the better shortstops fantasy wise based on what he produced last year. But then that's three guys. Now, I'm not saying that's not a good core, but we've been over a few offenses already, maybe three or four offenses that I would take that core over yours right now.
Oh, I
So
would
I
too.
think, so
Absolutely.
I think, so your pitching is really what is obviously setting it completely above difference. I don't know. Obviously, it has to be. I don't know if you become one of those top three or four offenses if you just fill it out with value guys. I do think you need to go out there and make a splash.
I think I'll probably get one of the top four first basemen. It might cost me 15, might cost me 20, might cost me five. I don't know, whatever they'll cost me. And I think whatever money is left over, we'll probably be going after some of the outfielders. I had some of the speed there because that's where the speed in the outfield is located. Speed's in the outfield for the
And you
speed.
don't have much speed right now. That is a need.
And so but that's like okay, so I'll add Marte and Robert, and then we're there. And so then I'll have most of the speed that I'll need. Altuve, I'll chip in speed. Laureano, I'll chip in speed. I think those projections are a little light for Laureano because that's only, or that was last year actually, they're not projections. So I mean that was for 350 at bats. So let's say he probably
You,
goes 20 and 15 next year. I'd be happy with that.
I think you're a little too high, Laureano. I mean, he's a dollar player, and it's not a bad keeper, but we'll see. Here's my thing. I don't think you have a player on your team that hits 30 home runs outside of Devers.
Okay, Adames, but okay.
You think he hits 30
I don't know.
again?
I have three guys that hit 28.
Oh, and that's what I'm saying. And this is me kind of nitpicking at the team because
Yeah.
I like the core of the offense. I do. But I don't, like I said, I think you almost need to go out there and get and splash because like I said, I think there are, and you have no problem saying this because you have to fill out your offense. There was I think three or four, maybe five other teams in the league that I would take their offense right now over yours. But
Yeah,
again, that's where we
I only have five guys in my offense right now.
right. Well, most guys only have six or seven. No one's really keeping nine offensive players.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but and I think Devers regresses a little bit in that offense. Boston's the worst team in their division.
He could, but it might also boost his on base percentage if he draws more walks, and I'm okay with that.
Right. Um, but that takes us to the rotation, right? I mean, I haven't even gotten to the rotation yet, which is absolutely deadly. Alcantara, I think you can argue with Burns is the more best fantasy pitcher in baseball right there. Duvall, I agree with you. I think he might get 20, 25 saves for San Francisco. That's not a
For
good
a
team.
dollar, I just need him to get me 20 saves.
Exactly, and I completely understand that. Gosman, I like Robbie Ray's the big K guy. I think people sometimes undervalue just a 200 strikeout guy, and even if he's got a 4 ERA and a 1.1 WHIP, if you can just go out there and say, "Hey, you're going to get me 200 Ks," I think you just got to get that, and I think that's almost worth $10 on its own.
Yeah.
Joe Ryan obviously has some positiveness going on with him. Spencer Strider is one of the best values in the league, and then Zach Wheeler obviously at the bottom there as long as he stays healthy. I mean, again, you can't really go all that wrong with it. So yours is filled, so I'd feel better with your rotation right now. But I will say overall, you do have the closer, which makes a difference. Peter's got the higher ceiling.
His is more electric because he has the more strikeouts, but I like the stability of mine better, and I also think that my whip will be lower.
Right. Like if I was to take three guys, Alcantara, Gosman, Strider, or no, who would you say are your yeah?
It's a big four, really. It's
It
Alcantara,
is.
Wheeler, Gausman, Strider.
And I think I would, at this point, again, yours is finished. I would feel safer with yours, and you have more money going to the draft. I think I would take Burns, Cease, McClanahan, McKenzie.
Could be argued.
Yeah, and it totally, definitely could be argued. But
Yeah,
that's why I think Peterson just such a great. You're in a great spot too with your money. Like I said, you're kind of you're nitpicking almost at that point. Yeah,
exactly. Embarrassment of riches, one
it
might.
is. It is, and that's why I'm really curious to see what you do in the draft. That's why I don't think this is the draft for you to go in there and just kind of fill with $15 and $20 guys. I don't think it is.
We'll see. We'll see. I have the guys that I got my eyes on, and we'll see kind of how it goes. There's some
Heck yeah, man.
guys that I want to do, that I want to draft, and we'll kind of see how it goes.
Right.
We got 4 minutes till we get cut off here. So to recap, my power rankings were myself 1, Peter 2, Phil 3, Jay 4, Eric 5, Krim 6, Chad 7, Tyler 8, Justin 9, Chris 10, Dex 11, Dave 12, Bryce 13, and Jordan 14. You want to go over yours?
I got Peter 1, Kyle 2, Phil 3, Krim 4, myself 5, Jay 6, Chris 7, Chad 8, Tyler 9, Justin 10, Dex 11, which could maybe go higher, honestly, after looking at it, Bryce 12, Dave 13, and Jordan 14.
All right. What do you want to fill this last 3 minutes and 41 seconds with?
What tell me one thing that you've noticed in the first 3 years that I mean, obviously you've been doing keeper leagues a lot longer than us. What's something that you just notice that people either do too much of or they don't do enough of that could help people out in a fantasy league like this? Does that make sense?
I don't think that people value people differently, and I guess that's okay. But people like view taking on like like people wanting like a Bregman for 36, people like wanting a Garrett Cole for 49. That just like baffles me. And we've gone on about this at nauseum, but like
Right.
the amount of like people that are like, oh yeah, like people that wanted Luis Garcia for 22. I'm like, what are we doing here? And like I don't really always understand the values that people place on guys. Like I view things very black and white. Like I would trade the $50 guy that I have for 51. I would trade him away for the $10 guy that's for 5. So I'd rather have the $5 value than the $1 plus value. And that's just kind of something that I usually will look to do depending on the availability of what's kind of out there in the draft. But I don't know, the people that do the opposite always kind of baffles me.
Now, do you think now, I know this is looking ahead to next year, but with the reset year, now that we kind of know salaries, do you think overall, when everything kind of gets thrown back in next year, do you think salaries do come down a little bit, or do you think it's just going to be crazy again?
I think that there will always, from here on out, the salaries will always be crazy. They'll always be inflated because next year we still have the guys that are kept at bargains. We're still gonna have the Christian Javier's, the Spencer Striders,
Yeah.
the Ryans of the world that are still gonna be on cheap contracts. And every time a team has a $1 player and a $2 elite pitcher, that's just more money they get to spend on the guys that fill out the rest of their roster. And so I think it's still gonna push up the prices. I think we're gonna see guys go for prices that we've never seen before, probably next year. This year, I don't think it's worth it to spend $50 on a Michael Harris. But I've seen guys in the past, like I said, years in the other league I'm in that's similar to this. Mike Trout went for 62. Johan Santana went for, I think, 71 one year.
Wow.
Like
You've been doing this for a while. Johan Santana, holy shit.
yeah. So like I think that starts to happen the more values that are put in place and the more we kind of learn each other and all that. And it's a lot of fun.
One more thing. How about this? There's a lot of great C players available.
Yeah.
How late is it to? Obviously, you don't want to give up on your season. You don't want to like sell too early. But at some point, those C players lose value day by day. Like if I suck, Trout and Betts, right? Perfect examples.
Yeah.
How soon do you have to make those decisions where you actually get something back in a trade this year? Because
You want to beat the market because there's who knows how many buyers, how many sellers there's going to be. You have to kind of gauge that. How many people are all in? Nobody wants to piss away their $100 that they spent. Like this is like legit. You don't want to piss that away. So you got to gauge, well, how many people are out of it? How many people are in it? How many buyers would I had if I wanted to sell these, or how many people would I do that to kind of get that leverage? But I think it can be anytime. It can be anytime. It could be a month, could be 2 months, but I think everyone should probably give at least 2 months before punting the season. But
right.
opinions may vary on that.
All right, looks like we're wrapping up. We'll be back soon enough to grade after the draft,
Soon.
so we can talk some Cubs baseball or something then. But
Yeah. Hopefully, in about a week, we'll be back. Eric, it's been nothing but a pleasure. Thanks for
heck
doing
yeah,
it.
man.
And peace out, everyone. And fuck y'all.
Fuck y'all.
Fuck you.
There we